trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there is no Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a bunch of people that Nick also knows well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email server?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
We came, we saw, we died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee, Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots are taken out. Yes.
But I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should
be running. It's not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence, a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean...
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet.
Hello? Hello?
Yo, we here now. Stupid.
Hope y'all are doing well. It's a beautiful Sunday morning, and we are here for episode number 77 of the Politics Show. That's right. This is episode 77. And I was looking back through some of my archives this morning just to see, what type of clips I had. I keep an archive. So let me start over here. I keep an archive of my clips on a hard drive, and I'll go into that drive sometimes and just sort it by the date things were added, so I can go back a year from now and look at what I was talking about a year ago. So just randomly, I'm going to show you. This is a clip. This is the clip I just pulled out before I came on from 1 year ago in late October. Check this out. This is pretty wild.
Congresswoman Liz Cheney, good morning and good to have you here in person.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Good to be here.
Well, we've been talking about what's happening in the Middle East right now. I know you watch the region closely. President Biden counseled Netanyahu during his trip to Israel last week and repeated a certain phrase I want to play for you here in his Oval Office address.
But I caution this: while you feel that rage, don't be consumed by it. After 9/11, we were enraged in the United States. While we sought justice and got justice, we also made mistakes.
And that was a nod to 9/11 and the U.S. Invasion of Iraq, potentially an overreach. Do you agree with that warning President Biden is issuing there, that there is the risk here of Israel?
This is Dick Cheney's daughter asked about a 9/11 overreach.
Actions that could backfire on their own security.
I think that our support and defense of Israel needs to be unwavering. I think that for the most part, that's what President Biden has demonstrated. I
think that also Donald Trump is Hitler, and we need to do everything we can to stop him from getting into office.
Most of the themes that he laid out in his Oval Office address were exactly right about the importance of American leadership, the importance of understanding this is a battle between the forces of freedom and the forces of tyranny and terrorism. With respect to his comments about 9/11 and post 9/11, I would say the fact that we had not a single additional terrorist attack, mass casualty terrorist attack in over 20 years now demonstrates that the steps that we took were in fact effective.
Dick Cheney kept us safe after 9/11. After 9/11. I always love that with these conservatives. That was always their argument. Even when Trump was running, there's a famous clip where Jeb Bush says something like, "My brother kept us safe," and Trump is like, 9/11 happened on his watch. The worst 9/11 in the history of our country. Anyway, let's listen to a little bit more of this for a second.
I would say the biggest mistake, frankly, post 9/11 was the hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan that President Trump started, President Biden completed. So I think we need to...
Yeah, her family did not like the Afghanistan withdrawal because that pulled money out of Halliburton's pockets.
We need to set our differences about those issues aside. We certainly do have them, but with respect to what's happening in the world today, I think it's crucially important for the world to see that the United States, we are united across party lines in the defense of Israel and in the importance of the destroying Hamas, and also a very strong warning that the president has issued to Iran. Yeah. And that, frankly, the Biden administration...
See, I wanted to watch this because, listen, they were already setting up a war with Iran a year ago, right after this happened. Listen to this absolute
policy needs to be changed
swine
to make it consistent with the kind of warning that we've seen.
But in terms of that comment about reacting from a place of rage and unintended consequences, Secretary Blinken said the only way to defeat an ideology is by offering...
Did she just say Secretary Blinken?
Keep on bombing lots of people.
Whenever anyone brings
And
up
I think that the world has moved on far
Secretary
too
Blinken, I have to
quickly
play
from what
that.
Hamas did. Hamas slaughtered innocents. They invaded Israel and they slaughtered.
So we now know, we're a year out, and our press, of course, it's very slow for some reason. They're very meticulous. It takes them several weeks to figure out who won an election, or whether or not Israel killed a bunch of its own people with Apache helicopters on October 7th. Like, it takes them a while to confirm that. Almost a year. And by that time, Gaza's already wiped out. What can you do? Our press, aren't they great? So today's episode, when I started putting these clips together, the theme was cringe to 11. Because if you've seen Spinal Tap, and I was going to grab the clip, but I don't even want to deal with the copyright nuance. There's a scene in Spinal Tap where, Nigel Tuffman explains to Rob Reiner, liberal hero Rob Reiner, that they have amps that go to 11. And when I started seeing the type of stuff that's going on, which I'm about to play for you, you're going to understand why the theme was cringe to 11. And also I kind of wanted to put a placeholder up for the show just so it was in place. And I'm in a really good space as far as my routine goes with this. I finally caught up with myself. I would make these live streams, and then I'd start cutting up segments, and I'd get backlogged, and it'd take me a couple weeks to cut up the last live stream. Well, I am on top of it now, so you're going to see a lot more creative output from me moving forward. I'm going to be like a machine. That said, though, let's start talking about this. This is the cover art I put together. These are, of course, being the Spinal Tap knobs that go to 11. This woman on the left here is from an Oxford article about the word cringe being added to the Oxford dictionary, and you get the idea. But let's get it started. One of the first things I want to talk about, and this happens every election cycle, is people in entertainment get stupid, like real stupid, and start coming out and saying, endorsing political candidates. And don't get me wrong, the Kid Rocks and of the world, the few celebrities that the Republicans have these days, being the minority, not mainstream party, it's embarrassing too. But I'm going to focus on, the real heavyweights of political, stardom here in this segment about the cringe of Hollywood political endorsements. So this first one is the absolute worst. I'm just going to hit you with the full weight of this garbage right up front here. So this one is Ben Stiller. And Ben Stiller, honestly, I never really thought Ben Stiller was funny to begin with. And this really brought me back because I had an ex-girlfriend who loved the movie Zoolander, and I just always thought it was so stupid. And she made me watch it, and it's like Ben Stiller, rich ass, spoiled ass, fucking. He's Jerry Stiller's son, Ben Stiller. He grew up rich in Hollywood, in the son of a famous person. And Zoolander is him making fun of famous, out of touch people. If you've ever seen it, he plays like a male model thing. Him and Chris Kattan, two of the most unfunny people in all of Hollywood, made the most unfunny movie. So here he's going to do an homage to one of the worst comedy films ever made on behalf of Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff. And you just enjoy this. This is absolutely terrible.
What is this? A White House for ants? How are you and Kamala going to live there when you're first gentleman and she's the president?
So good. Because it's like in Zoolander when he thinks that the model is actually the house that they live in. That's how dumb he is. He must be voting for Trump. as these smug liberal dipshits might say. So here's another one. This one doesn't have Ben Stiller, but it's equally as bad. And this is, them trying to play this whole, they're trying to play to women, which we're going to get into the abortion thing in a minute, but watch this.
To all the dads out there, I would say this is the time to really show your support for your daughters.
What do I love about being a girl dad? I love how much smarter she is than all the guys in the room already. I can tell that she's going to be a powerhouse. She is.
Like, I'm curious, I know I don't have a lot of, I shouldn't say that. I'm curious. I'm actually curious what women think about this, because it's such obvious, like the lowest of the low, bottom of the shoe, scummy pandering.
Is already at 2.5.
My daughter's 22 and a half, is a feminist, incredibly strong, and has really just inspired me in so many ways. I love her.
I'm the proud dad of Ella over here.
My vote for Kamala is an investment in my daughter's future.
I agree. I'm right there with you.
When the Dobbs decision came out 2+ years ago, I heard from Kamala right away, and then the next person was Ella. She texted me right away, essentially saying, we need to fight. This is not just an issue for women. This is an issue for men and families. And this is one of the many, many reasons why we've got to elect Kamala as president.
Never in my lifetime did I think that we would be having to fight for this and the fight for our own bodies. And I think it's really important for the men to step up and show that they actually support us and they're willing to put things on the line to help us.
So to start here, I just want to say there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, I'm not against abortion by any sense. I'm not against women having the right to choose. But it's kind of odd to me that that's kind of like the Democrats' argument right now. Their big thing is, we need to be able to kill babies. Let's fight so we can kill babies, against the backdrop of genocide in Gaza. Like we gotta elect Kamala so we can kill babies at home while we're slaughtering babies in the Middle East. It's like that's kind of what the Democrats' pitch looks like, and I don't know if that's completely tone deaf or it's intentional, or they just are so rich and out of touch they don't know any better. Maybe all the years of sweet donor money kind of get into their handlers and all the people that work inside the Democratic Echoplex, the Lincoln projects and the Midas touches, so to speak, the complete grifters who just take donor money and repeat their worldview back at them. I think those people are in full panic mode right now. And also they're so insulated with money and, their own opinions being spat back at them through network television and cable news like MSNBC and CNN, that they maybe really believe this kind of shit. Maybe they're not. Just so let's trudge along down this path. These guys are so desperate now. They revived Lizzo. Do you remember? Lizzo was like she was in trouble for some kind of sexual stuff. You know the deal. This guy Royce White kind of sends it up. That's my president.
Oh my God, no, thank you.
So this is Royce White, who is, to full disclosure, a black MAGA guy. He says they revived Lizzo, the one who was accused of pressuring dancers to eat food from a naked performer's vagina in Amsterdam. I mean, come on, Royce. Have a little fun. See how the phrase "believe all women" doesn't even apply to all women? This campaign is so dishonest and desperate, it's almost unbelievable. Almost. Yeah, I mean, it's not unbelievable at all, but it is funny to watch.
Wonderful. Thank you for everything that you're doing. You're fighting for democracy for this country. I know it's hard, but you're so close. You're almost there.
We are. And you are a part of it. And
Thank you for that. Let's win this.
We will, sister.
Okay.
Come on. That's my president.
That's my president. So Lizzo's back. Now that it's convenient. I mean, what am I talking about? They had her at like a fundraising event too. So they're clearly trying. So this is one that kind of surprised me. I gotta say, this is Michael Keaton, and whatever. Michael Keaton seems like a good dude. This is one. I think of all of these, this is the one that you can tell the guy is just the most insulated and out of touch because Michael Keaton's like, yeah, I'm Michael Keaton. Like he seems like a sensible dude, but he's also Michael Keaton. You know, he was the first Batman. He was in Mr. Mom in the 80s. He's Beetlejuice. He won a fucking Academy Award for Birdman. He's a fantastic actor who's got a long, long resume. So that guy is just set for life. He's surrounded by sycophants and people like combing his hair and doing his makeup and all that stuff. So he just turns on the news and hears Trump is the next Hitler. Trump is the next Hitler. He wants to sew girls' vaginas shut and not let them have babies or whatever, or not let them kill a baby, whatever they're running up the flagpole this week, right? So you just listen to the tone of this because he's like, come on, guys. Like, these guys don't care about you. Come on, you guys.
You know, for some of you folks who, guys mostly, I guess, who are thinking about attending a rally with Musk and Trump, they don't really respect you. They laugh at you behind your back. They think you're stupid. They don't want to hang out with you. They have nothing in common with you. They're not your...
Do you think, quick question, do you think Steve Schmidt, Rachel Maddow, Paul Krugman, all these people that kind of foment these ideas that he's repeating that like, Elon Musk and Trump don't hate you and, don't want to hang out with you, which is debatable. When you listen to Trump, which we're going to do in a few minutes, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who wouldn't be cool hanging out with the average Joe. He seems like a very, say what you want about his positions and his history, whatever. He seems like personally, he's the kind of guy who would do well in any room. Like he's been around the world enough and dealt with enough people. The guy works in the hotel industry. He's been a public figure for like 50 years now. So he seems like a people-friendly person. You know what I mean? Anyway, I'm rambling.
Bros. And I'm telling you, when Trump years ago, I guess, said I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they'd still vote for me, basically what he's saying in parentheses is these people.
So again, this is one of those things too where when I heard it, I thought, oh wow, because the press just runs with it. But if you see it in context, he's clearly joking. He's not. He's kind of like in awe of like how hard the press is hitting him and how it's not working. That's what that whole I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and they would still vote for me. That's, if you read the context of that, that's basically what he's saying. He's not saying it in a malicious way. He's saying, hey, look, the press is throwing all this mud at me and my people are loyal. No matter what no matter what bullshit mud the press slings on me, my voters stay loyal to me. They don't listen to the press. That's what he was saying.
They're so stupid. They're so dumb. They'd still vote for me. They have no respect for you. Trust me.
And it's funny because I think this is revealing. This kind of stuff is revealing because this is how these people feel. And I don't doubt that someone kind of wrote this for him, some Democratic strategist. This is the new thing, where Trump and Vance are out there doing podcasts. The Democratic marketing people, the campaign people, the people distributing the money are going to influencers or like famous people and being like, okay, hey, say something kind of like this about how Musk and Trump think that working men are stupid. You know what I mean? Which working men, first of all, they're not going to listen to Hollywood liberals over Trump anyway. Especially the thing that's so crazy to me too about Trump, I didn't used to like Trump. I like him now because of this. And it fucking makes me angry because they made me like the guy. You know what I mean? Like Rachel Maddow, these like Liz Cheney. These guys are the people who made me like Trump. You know, if I was kind of indifferent to Trump, I was like, yeah, whatever. Like he's a rich game show host. But as they piled on and piled on and piled on, it just makes him more appealing. I don't think that they realize what they're doing. I mean, they clearly don't, but let's keep going here. So next up is your boy Eminem. And this is one of my favorites. Eminem will introduce Obama at Kamala Harris's rally in Detroit. And Tired Peasant here is like, another rich fuck endorses the status quo. Very on brand. I love that energy, Tired Peasant. But yeah, Eminem was like the guy who killed his girlfriend and, you know, said all this misogynist stuff. And it's funny how they're like, we got to lead into misogynist people like Eminem because Trump is so bad. He says stuff that's misogynist. Like, wait a minute. Like, Eminem is your guy, to your go-to guy? Eminem really, not only that, but I think when it comes to Eminem, and listen, I respect Eminem. I grew up listening to Eminem. But his cultural relevance at this point is slim to none. Like, how many kids do you know that are like, oh yeah, dude, Eminem, I'm all about it? No. And you know, he has some good stuff. Some of his music is classic, you know. Like there's not many people get to the level that Eminem is at. And I respect that. But he's showing how insulated he is and how little how honestly he's not connected to the streets anymore, because the streets ain't talking favorably about Obama. I'll tell you that much. And if anyone's the voice of the streets, it's me. That's a joke. That's a joke. I'm just saying, the word on the street, you know, if you get around, you talk to people, and I will say, like, I'm not trying to claim that I'm the foremost expert of the word on the street, but I drive rideshare pretty frequently, and I have done it in multiple major metropolises, and I talk to a lot of people, and I will tell you this, outside of the kind of like brunch liberal type women, like professional women, older professional women, no one likes Kamala Harris. Like, I have talked to several black men, even black women, who are like, no. But like upper class, like office type white women absolutely love Kamala Harris and almost start crying if you tell them that you're not a fan. Like it's like a real deep emotional thing for Kamala Harris supporters. So I was going to say, I feel like, but that would be kind of ironic, wouldn't it? I feel like Kamala Harris's supporters are very emotional. Okay. So let's keep going down this rabbit hole here. This is Tim Waltz on The View. And I love this caption. POV, you're at the gates of hell. That would be, it's like brunch liberal hell right there. But they talked about this on Rogan, and I'm not monetizing, so I'll take the risk. But they talked about the time that Trump was on The View. And so watching this clip got me thinking about Trump being on The View. So I had to go back, of course, and dig this up.
Donald Trump is a billionaire, a real estate mogul, and a television star. But does he really want to add president of the United States to his resume? A lot of people would like him to. Please, let's find out, and please welcome my friend, Donald Trump.
Barbara Walters, my friend. Okay. Also, well, we'll get into this a little bit later with an Oprah clip, but I will also say Trump has been pretty consistent with his political views, too, when you listen to his stuff.
so happy to have you. Whenever you're on with us, we're very happy. We love it.
That's a lot of kisses. Whenever you're on with us, we're very happy. I just want to play that last part one more time.
We're so happy to have you. Whenever you're on with us, we're very happy. We love it.
And that is why people hate the media, because some of us can remember shit like that, and we can see how disingenuous they're being when they clutch their pearls over Donald Trump today. So, keeping on the cringe theme here, Donald Trump did a stint at McDonald's, and I think this might have been one of the most brilliant political stunts of all time. I really do. Whoever came up with this on his staff, this might be what gets him elected. Like it's crazy. It's crazy to think about this, but this is just absolutely brilliant. And I'm sure you've seen it, but let's play just a little bit of it.
Bring that one up. I'm gonna take care of these.
Okay.
Right there, right there. Got it.
He just seems like such a natural. It looks like the general manager is out on the floor.
That right far right, hang it right up there. Yeah. And then you want to do the salt over here?
Yeah.
I did these ones already. They're good. You just got to do that one right there. So grab that.
Let me give him extra salt.
And look at how he treats the McDonald's guy like an equal, right? Like the way that he interacts with this guy's kind of teaching him, telling him what to do and stuff, and he treats this guy with respect. You know, the people who hate CNN and MSNBC and all that stuff, they know that Rachel Maddow and Joan Walsh and all these uppity C words don't give a shit about them. And so them getting on a camera and going like, Donald Trump is the worst person ever and he doesn't care about you, like Michael Keaton, you know, it has zero effect. In fact, I think it has the reverse effect. But let's finish this out, because just again, let me pull that back. Look at how he interacts with this kid.
Right far right, hang it right up there. Yeah. And then you want to do the salt over here? Yeah. I did these ones already. They're good. You just got to do that one right there. So grab that.
Let me give him extra salt.
No. Yep. Oh, yep. Good. Okay. Right there. And then we're gonna grab the fry scoop right here. Right. Put it into there and just give him a twirl that way.
Okay. Where's the little thing?
Medium. We got it.
Now, Trump talks about it in the Rogan interview. We're going to play in a few minutes, but he knows guys who run McDonald's. He talks about one of his friends runs like 50 McDonald's, and that's how this came up. But that is just, you know, I think it's one of the most brilliant publicity stunts of all time. And he says in the Rogan interview, it took him like 15 minutes, and he's like, I didn't even think we'll get to that. But the best part about it, in my opinion, was the response, because at this late in the campaign season, I don't think the Democrats had, in their grifting neoconservative, consulting firms that are running their campaigns now, had any idea how to counter this. They've never seen anything like this. And Trump is such a natural, but look at this. This is kind of how bad it got. Check this out. This is an actual headline from a Newsweek post right here. And it says, rumors have been circulating on social media that former President Donald Trump's visit to popular fast food chain was staged. And this guy is responding, wait, he wasn't actually hired as the fry guy? It's like a 15-minute campaign stop, but that's how ridiculous these people got with this stuff. And so there's another instance where there was an AI photo of Trump like as a Pittsburgh Steeler, and these fact checkers ran with this stuff Whoa, Trump doesn't play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Thank God for the fact checkers. As the Newsweek Post says, Donald Trump has shared what is likely an AI-generated image on his Truth Social account, showing him as a player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got to censor that. That's misinformation, right? Look at this. So Savannah says, are you serious? Former President Trump is not a football player for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Say it ain't so. We are so heartbroken to learn of this. No. And it's interesting to me that I say a lot of things are interesting because a lot is interesting. I'm a curious man. It's curious to me that these people, you know, are now the people they used to make fun of. You know, it used to be that the conservatives were the ones making stupid arguments. And they were so easy to make fun of. And in the partisan world anyway, that dynamic has completely flip-flopped. And now it's the Democrats that are the ridiculous partisan hacks, just saying the dumbest possible things. And the Republicans are actually the ones kind of like making sense. And I'll tell you why that is, because in the Obama era, all those CUNTs that do, you know, political PR like the Midas Touch and the Lincoln Project, they all fled from the right because there's no money there anymore and took over the Democratic Party. And that's why you have Liz Cheney and John Kelly and all these John Bolton, all these like careerist neocons coming out in favor of the Democrats or trying to like prop up Kamala Harris for another 4 years of this crap they've been running for the last 4, where they, you know, preen about, you know, moral good and bomb the shit out of people in other countries with all our money while the country crumbles around us. So to seal this one off, this is a meme I thought was great. And it just has, you know, the guy in the his shirt coming up to the only, you know, there's a ton of empty. It's this the standard meme where there's like all these empty, and he comes and stands next to him. He's like, Trump doesn't really work at McDonald's. It's just beautiful. So there was so much good material in all this. I was able to put together a couple different segments with all the, I was able to bottle the liberal outrage over kind of their media narratives derailing. I mean, this is for anyone that worked with the Bernie campaign and felt slighted in 2016 and then again in 2020. We're already pissed off. Like, I've been pissed off since 2016. You know, nothing has changed for me about my political, you know, leanings. Like, I want the Democrats to be punished and have since 2016. I mean, they were punished in 2016. That's the irony. And I got in fights at that time with my family members about Bernie Sanders. I remember so clearly one of my aunts, she sincerely wanted a woman president, and she just wanted Hillary Clinton because she was a woman. And I was just like, look, I would love a woman president. It's got to be a woman I like. Like, the gender doesn't matter to me, right? It's like the person, Tulsi Gabbard, I would vote for tomorrow. Shama Swant, I would vote for tomorrow. Jill Stein, I will probably vote for. There are women I will vote for. It has nothing to do with their gender. It has to do with their history. It was the same thing with Obama. That's how Obama got elected. It was the Iraq War, really, for a lot of us, because we went, oh, well, he had the balls to say no to the Iraq War, so he's good, you know? Boy, did we turn out wrong on that. So the next kind of phase of this brunch liberal meltdown, as I like to call it, and this is the really poster child for the brunch liberal movement, right? I don't know if you know the origins of this word. Let's go to, I should have pulled this out and done a deep dive into this for you. But I'm gonna improvise just a little bit and pull this up for you. And what I'm pulling up is the Urban Dictionary definition of the word brunch Democrat. Okay. And if you You probably know what it is, most of you, so I'm not trying to educate you on anything you don't already know. But let's just make this clear for the rest of the audience here. Brunch Democrat is a slang term usually aimed at American Democrat voters, generally who are upper middle class or rich, who care more about being mildly inconvenienced by not being able to go to brunch than they do about people who aren't as better off as them. The term originated during the Women's March on Washington in 2017, where several white women held up signs that said, "If Hillary were president, we'd be at brunch." And that's this woman right here, the mascot of the brunch liberal movement right here. Well, we have an emergency in brunch liberal land this week. We had an emergency in brunch liberal land this week when the Washington Post declined to endorse the Democratic candidate. And this is, of course, the roof, the sky is falling. But I'm just going to borrow some coverage on this from your man, Glenn Greenwald. So listen to Glenn's kind of quick rundown on this massive issue here.
For, and that somehow this is some great loss because now the Washington Post, the people in this country don't get the benefit of hearing the Washington Post tell them how to think and how to behave, as if anybody cares what the Washington Post even thinks. But these people live in this completely self-contained world, totally self-delusional, where they feed themselves these glorifying narratives about the role of newspapers and their feisty and courageous defense of democracy, which means endorsing the Democratic Party candidate in every election, and the quote-unquote failure or refusal of the Washington Post, and as you'll see, the LA Times, to fulfill their role is something that they cannot contain. I mean, the amount of psychotic responses by very recognizable names is almost hard to express. Now, here from Semaphore, which is just another new digital outlet.
So just in case my setup wasn't clear enough, what basically happened is the Washington Post said, we're not going to endorse a candidate for president this year. And brunch liberals' heads exploded.
The headline was, editor resigns, subscribers cancel, as Washington Post's non-endorsement prompts crisis at Jeff Bezos' paper. Quote, the first prominent journalist, editor-at-large Robert Kagan, resigned Friday in response to the decision Semaphore first reported, but there may be more. Quote, people are shocked, furious, surprised, said an editorial board member, citing internal...
So I don't know if you know who Robert Kagan is, but we're going to get into that in a minute. And the fact that people are upset. First of all, I didn't know Robert Kagan was the editor of the Washington Post until now. Robert Kagan is a fucking retarded neocon. And I say that with all due respect to retarded people. He's a terrible, terrible person. Sorry, retarded people, for comparing Robert Kagan to you. I apologize in advance for that. That was my bad, and it won't happen again. Robert Kagan was one of the architects of the, Project for the New American Century, literally the architect of all the foreign entanglements we're involved in right now. He's like at the top of the list of those people. And his wife is Victoria Nuland, who's responsible largely for the debacle in Ukraine. And I call it that with 1,000% confidence because that's what it is. Ukrainistan. It's Afghanistan too. In the 80s, we armed the Taliban to fight the Russians in Afghanistan. And look how that turned out. Ukraine is a rerun of that.
Discussions around resignation. Quote, if you don't have the balls to own a newspaper, then don't. I mean, if this person is so offended.
I just, again, to kind of clarify that last little break, I love that this liberal pearl clutching is exposing how awful the Washington Post is. Robert Kagan was the editor of the Washington Post. A vehement neocon was the guy who decides what the headlines are, what stories get to run and what don't. Robert Kagan. We're going to keep going here in a minute, but let me let Glenn finish.
At what the Washington Post did and accusing Jeff Bezos of lacking balls, what does it say about them that they're unwilling to object, to raise their voice in defense of democracy and against fascism and the new Adolf Hitler on the horizon, if they're not even willing to object under their own name, instead hiding behind anonymity? The article goes on, quote, members of the Post editorial board were taken aback on Friday when they learned about the decision from top opinion editor David Shipley. The board had drafted an endorsement of Harris earlier this month, which was sent to the paper's owner, Jeff Bezos.
So it was already kind of like a afterthought. They're like, yeah, of course we're going to endorse the Democratic Party like we always do, because the neocons have quietly shifted over there and we can drape a goddamn pride flag on our war piggery.
On Friday, NPR reported that an opinion staff learned the news at a tense meeting shortly before Lewis's announcement. One person familiar with the figures told Semaphore that the decision already seemed to be impacting subscriptions in the last 24 hours. And then Friday,
I want to talk to you.
Their subscription, an unusually high number, an employee said. What did it say?
I want to talk to you.
Refuses to endorse Kamala Harris. Like, generally, the reason you're supposed to read a newspaper is to have access to the reporting, to understand what's going on in the world. Not because you expect them to be an activist group on behalf of your ideology or political party, but of course that's exactly what the expectation now is of all of these papers who cater to a very specific political camp.
The kind of people that can afford to pay for monthly subscriptions to have their opinions reflected back at them, basically. That's what the New York Times and the Washington Post and Newsweek and all that shit is now. And I think one of the things that the last couple of years have totally pulled the mask off for me is how worthless college degrees are. You know, it's basically this institutionalized way of thinking. These colleges are not institutions of higher learning. They're institutions to mold you into a good little foot soldier for this fucking bullshit regime of nonsense where, you know, as an American, we used to have some moral high ground in the world. We used to be like, you know, the good guys kind of. And maybe I'm just deluded about that. Maybe that was just propaganda too, you know. Suddenly my internet connection is starting to get spotty as I talk about this. But, you know, the point I'm just making here is I love the United States. I'm not anti-American or working for Putin or Hamas or any of these unserious little girls scream at people who disagree with them. But let me let Glenn finish here.
And an ideological faction, generally just affluent, highly educated people who live on the East and West Coast who support the Democratic Party almost entirely. That's the readers of the New York Times and the Washington Post. And they're not subscribing because they want to learn about the world. They're subscribing almost the way you donate to a group with a cause that you support. If you want to prioritize gun rights, you're going to give to the NRA. If you believe in abortion rights, you're going to give to Planned Parenthood. If you believe in the Democratic Party, you're going to give to the Washington Post and the New York Times. And the minute that either of them and any of them fail to advance your agenda, you're going to pull your money back because you're not actually reading them to learn anything. You don't really want them to do reporting. You want them to be activists on behalf of your candidate. And because the Washington Post, in this case, at least explicitly decided this year not to, you have all these liberal journalists demanding that everybody cancel their subscriptions. The article goes on, quote.
So it gets better. And this is actually a really good piece. I'm sure most of you watch Glenn Greenwald. If you don't, go watch this. He doesn't need my help. But I kind of took the select cuts from this. And this is where he goes into kind of the list of people. And this is the part that is the most interesting to me, is the list of people who are upset about this. And you're going to see why. Watch this.
Here is the former Obama National Security Advisor and the current Biden White House official, Susan Rice. Here's how
She's a current Biden White House official. Now, she worked for the Obama administration.
She reacted today.
We talked about this a little bit in our thing with Taibbi last week. Taibbi, the guy who was interviewing Taibbi, RJ Eskow, pointed out that during the Colin Kaepernick protests, she was one of the first people to accuse it of being Russians. And I didn't pull it here. Hold on. I'm going to pull it up real quick just so you can see it, because this is who Susan Rice is. Russia did BLM. Yeah, here you go. So she was one of the first people to float this as an excuse for civil unrest. Like, yo, that's disinformation. Susan Rice blames foreign actors for stirring George Floyd protests right out of the Russian playbook. And this is from June 1st of 2020. I like that they got a shot of her with her mouth open like that. Former Obama advisor Susan Rice has blamed the violent protests that rocked major American cities over the weekend on foreign actors and even suggested that Russia could be involved in stirring them up. So that's who Susan Rice is. Let's keep going.
Upon this announcement, the Washington Post would not be endorsing, quote, so much for democracy dies in darkness. This is the most hypocritical chicken shit move from a publication that is supposed to hold people in power to account.
I will say
where would this idea come from?
Trump has empowered people like this, because 10 years ago, pre-Trump, Susan Rice would never have said chicken shit in a fucking public context like that. But like, because Trump has come out and just speaks like Trump, and other people in politics realize how fake they look, and I feel like they're kind of starting to emulate him in this respect.
From that it's somehow courageous to endorse Kamala Harris and cowardly not to.
Trump changed the game.
And yes, newspapers are count. Right now, the powerful.
I was gonna say Trump changed the game, and then I hit I hit the wrong preloaded clip.
You have to get elected also, and because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected.
Are the people occupying the White House? That's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And what they're angry about isn't the Washington Post failure to hold Kamala Harris to account. They're angry at the Washington Post's refusal to cheerlead for Kamala Harris openly, explicitly in this election, because that is what their actual expectation of media outlets is, not to inform the world, not to do reporting, not to hold powerful people accountable, but to do everything possible to help the Democratic Party win.
To call, even going so far as to call a sitting president a Russian spy. Like, most partisan Democrats still believe that. They still believe that Putin secretly got Trump in the White House, and we just can't quite find the smoking gun, you know, with all the surveillance and shit that they did and the FISA warrants, tapping phones and stuff. And you look into those cases, and I don't want to go too far down this side road, but they're all manufactured, where, you know, they phone tapped people and then got testimonies from them and arrested them when their testimony didn't match the phone tap.
And to defeat Trump, that really is what they believe is the overarching primary moral duty and function of the corporate media. A purely partisan activist entity as they see it. And because the Washington Post decided to keep a little bit of a pretense of being a neutral journalistic outlet, they're enraged because they don't think that's what journalism is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about helping the Democratic Party vanquish Donald Trump.
And so that pretense that Glenn I want to stop for a second and point that out, that he said that pretense that they have a little bit of unbiasedness, that's what this is for. Because if you look at, and Glenn talks about this, you know, if you look at the type of articles the Washington Post turns out under editor Robert Kagan fucking Kagan was the editor of the Washington Post. I did not know that. This is the big take. This is the headline for me. Robert fucking Kagan was the editor of the Washington Post. Neocon Robert Kagan has been shilling for Democrats for years at the Washington Post. Neocon. Sorry, I got sidetracked. But again, the thing that he highlights here is I feel like they're doing this to kind of help the Post maintain some level of credibility because it doesn't really have any anymore. None of these outlets do. They all told you that Joe Biden was mentally fit enough to fucking be president, and then once they propped him up on stage, everyone went, holy shit. But no one went, wow, I'm not going to trust them anymore.
Speaking of people who believe that, Brian Stelter, who was on CNN and then got fired from CNN and is now back on CNN, here is what he said in his reaction today. Quote, a member of the Washington Post editorial department tells me Jeff Bezos' decision not to endorse is, quote, an outrageous abdication of responsibility. What abdication of responsibility to
Brian Stelter, the voice of credibility? Brian Stelter. Like who listens to this guy besides like Sally Albright's bots? Like any likes he gets on his posts or anything have to be from Sally Albright's like fake manufactured bot army, like we covered in the last episode with the fake Hillary Clinton army, all the fake burner accounts they make to inflate their viewpoints as if people care about them.
Tell voters to vote for Kamala Harris? That's the responsibility of journalists
Brian
and newspapers?
Stelter. Brian Stelter's here. Everyone's like, yeah, Stelter, woo! Stelter.
He went on, quote, democracy doesn't die in darkness. It dies when people anticipatorily consent to a fascist whim. They're trying to create this narrative that the reason Jeff Bezos didn't allow the Washington Post to endorse Kamala Harris,
when Brian Stelter speaks, America listens,
is because he's so petrified of the concentration camps Donald Trump is about to build and the Nazism and tyranny that's about to descend on our country if Trump wins, that he's trying to curry favor with Donald Trump by not allowing his news. Imagine thinking that that's what Jeff Bezos' thought process is. The only people who think that tyranny is on the horizon, that Donald Trump is going to build camps, are insane liberal pundits who listen to MSNBC or read the New York Times op-ed page today.
Yeah, the point that Glenn's making here is such a good one too, because the corporate media is essentially a gigantic echo chamber. You know, he's made this point, and several people have made this point about how, you know, all these weapons contractors and pharmaceutical companies buy heavy ad spends on the major networks, not because they're trying to sell their products, but because that's buying the security that this, you know, news outlet's never going to speak critically about you. And so because of that, you know, their entire audience is just the donors and the people that work at those companies, basically. You know, the media is basically Raytheon, you know, people who work at Raytheon, and then the marketing people who buy the ad space on these networks, and then the people who work at the networks. Like, that's literally the media ecosystem for this type of bullshit punditry.
The rest of the world doesn't actually believe that, doesn't think that way, as polling overwhelmingly shows. Just a little bit more of this kind of reaction here from Hank Hoffman. Here's how he responded. Fuck the fucking cowardly Washington Post. Obeying in advance the Post.
Again, I don't know who this guy is. He might just be a civilian, but I love how like the era of Trump has like made liberals like much more abrasive. They have to say, like, they can say dirty words in political
Cowardly
context.
plutocratic owners talking about you, Jeff Bezos. Lick the boots of Donald Trump. Traitors to a free press and a free country.
Okay.
All because.
Also, Trump I've never seen Trump in a situation where he is wearing boots, except maybe if he's like fly fishing or hunting or something. And I don't even think he does that. Maybe his son. So calling Trump a boot wearer or someone licking Trump's boots, like you could say licking Trump's golf shoes, maybe, but Trump's not a boot guy. So that's just not an accurate.
They wouldn't cheerlead for Kamala Harris. Here is the former actor Mark Hamill, who appeared in some Star Wars films and now is a very vocal Democratic activist, a crazy liberal resistance freak on Twitter. Here's what he said. Just canceled the newspaper that told us, quote, democracy dies in darkness. Hashtag boycott the Washington Post.
It's like I watched this unfolding and I'm like, do these people not remember like 10 years ago when they made fun of the same behavior on the right? Literally, like the MSNBC audience is the Fox News audience of the Obama era now. Like the Obama era, you remember, because it pissed me off, like they people would have these totally unfair criticisms of Obama, and it was clearly like kind of like subtle racism. Like, oh, he's a socialist who wants to take all your money and give it to... No, he's Ronald Reagan in blackface, essentially, but now that dynamic has completely flipped, and the MSNBC, brunch liberals are the partisan hacks who live inside their own little media bubble,
And this is very representative of the sort of reaction here, by the way, as he attached his cancellation notice to his tweet. We're sorry to see you go. And it's his cancellation notice to the Washington Post because they didn't do what he thinks they ought to do, the function they ought to serve, which is cheerlead for the Democratic Party.
He showed them.
The always sober Keith Olbermann added, democracy dies in the Washington Post. They're all playing on this phrase of the
Trump.
Washington Post about...
I got to play my Keith Olbermann.
I heart Donald Trump.
This is my favorite Keith Olbermann. When Keith Olbermann comes up.
Now, I'll confess that I have licked Joe Biden's dick all the way through since 1975.
Right at the start of the Trump presidency, democracy dies in darkness. Here is John Ralston, who's a...
Ralston is actually a former Rachel Maddow guest. That's the only reason I know who he is. She used to talk to him a lot on her show back when I used to watch
journalist
her show.
In Nevada. Journalism dies in darkness. As always, they have the same script they read from. They're just like a hive mind. Such complete groupthink. Here's Congressman Ted Lieu.
Also, Robert Kagan was the editor of the Washington Post. Fucking Robert Kagan was the guy who was defending democracy for y'all. These fucking morons.
The congressman from California, quote, the first step toward fascism is when the free press cowers in fear. Does it seem to you like the media is afraid of Donald Trump, is afraid of reporting negatively on Donald Trump? Does the corporate media do anything else in this country besides spend every day denouncing Trump as a fascist and a liar and as a Hitler figure? No. Does it seem like media outlets are hiding in the corner, petrified of Donald Trump? Here.
No, it does not, Glenn. It does not. So this last section here, well, it's not the last section, but this third video here, Glenn kind of shows you how unserious this is. How unserious this, like, oh, I'm going to unsubscribe from the Washington Post. Jeff Bezos, you're the worst, Jeff Bezos. Check this. This is.
Here's Melvin Young Fast, Democracy Dies in Sunlight. Here's Joan Walsh, the former editor-in-chief of Salon.com when I was there. She was my colleague for a long time. She now writes for The Nation. She's a fanatical Democratic partisan, and this is what she wrote. She wrote, and this is hilarious, I think. She wrote, I just canceled my subscription to the Washington Post. You should too. And you can see it went pretty viral, almost 2,000 retweets, 9,000 likes, probably more now. This was in fact at 1:14 p.m., so it's much more now. So she's saying you should also cancel your subscription to the Washington Post for failing to do what they're supposed to do. And then someone in response said to her, a more effective protest, given that it's Jeff Bezos who did this, would be for everyone to stop shopping on Amazon. And then Joan Walsh said in response, that's much harder, but I'll consider it. So in other words, look, I want to do everything possible to stop fascism and the new Adolf Hitler from taking power, so I'll cancel my Washington Post subscription. And when someone said to her, hey, maybe you should also boycott Amazon, she's like, I'm not going to miss my shows on Amazon Prime. Just in anger of this, I'm not going to stop shopping on Amazon. That's way too hard. I'll click a button and cancel my subscription. I'm going to stay away from Amazon and all the awesome things it has to offer.
So I've got a couple little follow-ups here for you. That's kind of the end of the commentary I have from Glenn here, but check this out. This is how deranged these people are. Now they're calling for George W. Bush to come out and endorse. Like, is that going to be the game changer in the election? Like, as if the Cheneys isn't enough. So this is Jonathan Reiner, who I believe is Rob Reiner's son. Don't quote me on that. But he says, the silence of George W. Bush during the most consequential election of our lifetime is indefensible. I like people who don't praise Hitler's generals.
You have to get elected also, and because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected.
So to make this even better, here's another brunch liberal cheering about the endorsement of Brett Stevens. Brett Stevens, if you don't know, is this like milquetoast conservative columnist who works at the New York Times, who Bill Maher has on to, make it look like he has a conservative voice on the panel. So this is Brett Stevens endorses Kamala. She even tags her. Come on, give us a hint, Brett. You really want to know? Gail, yeah. Brett, kicking and screaming, I'll cast my ballot for Harris. I really would rather have just set out Election Day, but January 6th and election denialism are unforgivable unless we do it by claiming the guy that people voted for is a secret Russian spy, right? So I'm not even going to continue reading that. I'm going to get into who Robert Kagan is. This is the editor. This guy right here, who we're going to talk about right now, was the editor of the Washington Post for like the last, I don't know how many years. I should look it up, but this guy was controlling what was coming out at the Washington Post. And we talked about this with last week. I did a piece on these State Department people who resigned over the war in Gaza. And the one woman, Stacey Gilbert, had a story about how she had done this report on the ground about how a certain country was violating, the rules of engagement by preventing aid to get through to civilians. She wrote the report up, sent it up, and the editors, her bosses, edited it and put out something completely different than what she had found. And that's how the press and these institutions work. The people at the root ground level are usually good-hearted people trying to do good work, but there's always some CUNT in middle management that goes ahead and alters that, after he's done doing this. So let's read this real quick. This is a tweet from Real JB10. Yeah, I just grabbed this. It's not someone I know personally or anything, but libs are now praising Robert Kagan, one of the worst neocon warmongers of the George W. Bush era. Kagan is married to Victoria Fuck the EU Newland. These two neocons have their fingerprints all over the Iraq war debacle and the Ukraine war, leading to millions of deaths. Millions of deaths. Victoria Newland. So I'm just going to show you this, a couple of videos real quick of Kagan. So here's CNN preening, crying over Kagan resigning. And I didn't even get into
Which is in turmoil tonight after the publisher announced that the newspaper will not endorse a candidate for president. That's the first time they have not done so in 36 years of presidential elections. The Post itself reporting that the decision came from the paper's owner, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. Now, the editorial page had drafted an endorsement of Kamala Harris before the decision was made, according to a source, and the fallout has been immediate. Washington Post editor-at-large Robert Kagan resigning from the newspaper tonight, others possibly to follow. There are people canceling their subscriptions. I've heard, some of them,
we know who they are.
They're using that as a way to express their
Mark Hamill and Joan Walsh.
feelings. Others are threatening to do so.
Molly Young fast.
Just moments ago, 8 Washington Post columnists, including David Ignatius, Ruth Marcus, Eugene Robinson, nationally known names, of course, speaking out and calling the decision, quote, a terrible mistake.
Eugene Robinson, another hack. The title for this segment could just be CUNTs pull their masks off, maybe, because that's exactly. I think what's so great about this is it's literally having the opposite effect, I think, that these people expected. That, they came out and clutched. Robert Kagan came out and clutched his pearls that the Post wouldn't endorse the Democrat, what does that tell you about who the Democrat is? A empty vessel for people like Robert Kagan.
And a, quote, abandonment of the fundamental editorial convictions of the newspaper that we love. Robert Kagan is out front, as I said, the just resigned editor-at-large of the Washington Post, also author of Rebellion, How Anti-Liberal...
I just had this idea that I'm just going to tell you right now because I'm going to have a sound drop of this soon. 50 Cent had this song, and he's like, I'm a motherfucking PIMP. I'm going to do my own little sound drop of that, but I'm going to change it to a motherfucking CUNT so I can play it whenever I have, neocons like this guy to talk about.
Is tearing America apart again. Bob, I have so much to ask you. I know it's emotionally, mentally...
The Honorable Robert Kagan, neoconservative editor of the Washington Post, who is somehow backing liberals now for God knows why, because he's a decent man. That's why. It's not because he's trying to keep a endless war going under a different party.
Every way, an incredibly difficult day and moment for you.
So difficult.
So you made this decision to resign.
Today was such a difficult day for Robert Kagan. Oh my God, my pearls are being clutched so tightly right now.
Tell me how you came to that decision, what got you over the line?
Well, it was a pretty easy decision. This is obviously an effort by...
Twas an easy decision because I am Robert Kagan and my pearls are so tight.
Jeff Bezos to curry favor with Donald Trump in anticipation of his possible victory. Trump has threatened to go after Bezos's business. Bezos runs one of the largest...
Trump has threatened to fire a lot of my friends who have worked in D.C. for years and years and have been forging policy despite what the electorate wants.
Companies in America, they have tremendously intricate relations with the federal government. They depend on the federal government. And Trump has made it clear that he will attack media organizations that are critical of him. He's threatened to take away CBS's license. And this...
Yes, Trump is such a threat to people like me, the Honorable Robert Kagan, one of the greatest men to ever live, the editor of the Washington Post. Here's Robert Kagan.
Going to go to Iraq at some point, maybe not this year, but eventually.
Young Robert Kagan.
I think the evidence that Iraq may have been involved in the attack, and certainly involved with al-Qaeda and bin Laden, is growing, and we may find more of it. I think it's essential that we do ultimately take on Iraq because Saddam Hussein is every bit an enemy of the United States as Osama bin Laden, and he possesses weapons of mass destruction, biological weapons. And so this war is going...
The greatest lie ever told and repeated by Robert Kagan, editor of the Washington Post until a couple days ago.
To go beyond Afghanistan. And I think the magnitude of the conflict is something that the Americans haven't wrapped their heads around yet. I think.
So I would like to thank the Washington Post for outing itself as a neocon war pig. I mean, we all knew this anyway, but now we have proof positive. Who's going to be the next editor? John Bolton? Jesus Christ. The Washington Post, it's so important. I am Robert Kagan. I am such a honorable man, and Donald Trump invented lying. We were all doing fine, and then Donald Trump invented lying in politics, and it ruined America, and we must take it back from this unbelievable liar. Jesus Christ, these people are so stupid. Ugh. So to move into the next part of this, we're going to talk about the accusation that Donald Trump is Hitler, because this is kind of the level 3. We just did level 1 and level 2 cringe. This is level 3. This is, again, the media just tearing its mask off for you and showing you who they really are. So, we're going to start here with this is the Donald Trump is Hitler report from, they do this every year to the point where it doesn't even land. Everyone's a Nazi in the world of these pearl clutching, I'm going to cancel my Washington Post subscription because they didn't do exactly what I want world. These brittle, just elitist swine. They're just the most terrible people. And I don't think that a lot of their intentions aren't bad. I think a lot of them are doing this from a place of like, we have to, they've been convinced that this is the end of America by people like Robert Kagan. So I really don't fall, I think someone like Joan Walsh or, Molly Youngfast even, I don't think that their goal is to be pretentious, out of touch CUNTs. I think that they're kind of whipped into that by the Robert Kagans of the world and trying to be a part of that, that group, which I'm really glad I never want to be a part of. So I think to start this segment off, I wanted to show you this tweet that just kind of sums up the world we live in today. I feel like too many people don't recognize fascism because they think fascism will arrive selling oppression and tyranny. But if you're part of the privileged group, fascism is selling you safety, normalcy, and tradition, which is what Trump is a threat to. These people have always been able to choose one of their crew, one of the, elite groomed that went to one of these fucking bullshit colleges and thinks in the same groupthink manner that they do. And the internet blew that up. And so now that you see them scrambling to kind of control the internet, but I think Dave Smith said it best. He's like, it's like someone standing on a beach with their hand out, trying to stop a wave from hitting shore. Like, yeah, you might get a handful of water, but it's over. The wave's hitting shore. There's nothing you can do at this point. So the accusation, of course, was made that Trump is Hitler. And I'm going to start by showing you this clip of Bob Woodward, another guy who had completely, when you look into who these people are, this guy was naval intelligence who somehow got this big story in the Nixon thing and conveniently was able to throw Nixon out when Nixon was, on the side of actually doing some progressive things like having a national healthcare system and, kind of ending wars and stuff. I think it's very similar dynamic to Trump in Nixon's terms, where people within his administration did things to sink him, right? So here is your boy, Bob Woodward, telling you
this with Coates several months ago. He said, is this blackmail?
And this is from Simon Atiba, who does a great job. Follow him on Twitter. I always get some great news.
In other words, is Trump being blackmailed?
I mean, that is wild.
Is Trump being blackmailed by the Russians? The same thing we tried to claim last time, but this time, another unverified gossip source said it.
I don't think that has really sunk in for the public yet, that his own director of national intelligence suspects he might be getting.
Who is this like dollar store Jerry Seinfeld guy too? This guy's like, well, weird, wild stuff. That's so wild that Trump is the secret Russian. Well, I haven't heard that one before.
It's not a Democrat. This is not some crazy liberal commentator.
It's not a Democrat like Robert Kagan.
Own director of national intelligence that suspects that.
And one of the
and if there's anything that we got to rely on is anyone that's been consistently correct about everything, it's our intelligence.
very important elements in all of this is to understand how good our intelligence is.
Understand how good our intelligence is. That Trump is a secret Nazi. It's security state gossip is now reliable news to these people. Hilarious. So to keep going, this is John Hassan, who's kind of a reporter. He said the Atlantic just ran a smear claiming that Trump disrespected Army Specialist Vanessa Guillen, who was murdered in 2020, but Guillen's sister shut it down immediately and said she just voted for Trump. So she says, you know, this Jonathan Lemire guy, one of the corporate bootlickers, tweets this out. You know, the hive mind is going to share all this stuff about how Trump's a Nazi again and a Russian, and you know, forget that Russians and Nazis hate each other. He's both of those anyway. And so Myra, Vanessa's sister, says, wow, I don't appreciate how you're exploiting my sister's death for politics, hurtful and disrespectful to the important changes she made for service members. President Donald Trump did nothing but show respect for my family and Vanessa. In fact, I voted for President Trump today. So, you know, again, pearl-clutching liberals versus reality is kind of the unfolding theme here. But let's continue. So here's Ron Fournier, and he's retweeting Mark Meadows. And Ron Fournier, of course, is one of the bootlicking hacks in the corporate press, kind of trying to foment this lie, basically this unverified intelligence community gossip. Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. You're a liar. Mark Meadows, I was in discussions featured in the Atlantic's latest hit piece against President Trump. Let me say this. Any suggestion that President Trump disparaged Mrs. Guillen or refused to pay for her funeral expenses is absolutely false. And here's Savannah saying, you're the professional liars who got caught. The Atlantic and Jeffrey Goldberg. You've become tabloid trash rag at this point. You have no journalistic credibility or integrity. You're worse than gutter trash. You're a stain on this country. Savannah, based Savannah, nails it. So who is Jeffrey Goldberg? So now, like, let's just pause for a second here and backtrack just a little bit. So we learned Robert Kagan, neocon Iraq war guy, was the editor of the Washington Post. Who's the editor of the Atlantic? Jeffrey Goldberg. Okay, well, who is Jeffrey Goldberg, you ask? Well, we're going to get to that right now. This guy, James Lee, I'm just going to let him do the talking because he put together a great little breakdown that's quick and efficient for the show today. So thank you, James Lee. Everyone follow James Lee. He doesn't, again, need my help. None of these people do. Most of them are bigger than me. Holy moly, Jeffrey Goldberg, Atlantic's editor-in-chief who compared Trump to Hitler, was an IDF prison guard at a facility known for torture and sex abuse. He also pushed the false Saddam al-Qaeda link that led to the Iraq war, and he keeps pushing for war in the Middle East. Now, here's an interesting side note to all this. You know, for all the people that think Trump is just going to be this, like, is going to be worse than the current administration on the Israel thing, this is a tell. Both Kagan and Goldberg are absolute Zionist freaks when it comes to this stuff. And they're against Trump winning, clearly. So that tells you something, you know, because I know there's a lot of people on the left that are like, oh, Trump's not going to be any different on Israel. Trump's not going to be, you know,
you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected.
So these neocons that run the media and have been relentlessly attacking Trump for years and years and years are like, Jeffrey Goldberg was in the IDF and he's pushing this Trump is a Nazi narrative very hard. So that's very telling from where I'm sitting. Let me put it to you that way. So let's watch what James Lee has to say here.
A lot of people have been talking about this article over the last couple days, but almost nobody is talking about who this guy is, Jeffrey Goldberg. And there's a lot there. I'm going to walk you through what I found. So first off, he is the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic. He's top dog. The magazine is owned by Laurene Powell Jobs. She is the widow of Apple co-founder Steve Jobs. She's also very tight friends with this lady.
Oh, we're going to get to that picture again.
Another rabbit hole there. If you know, you know. Anyway, back to Jeffrey. Citizenship. Dual citizen, United States and Israel. It says on his Wikipedia, he left college to move to Israel, where he served in the IDF during the first Intifada as a prison guard for Kitziot Prison, a prison camp set up to hold arrested Palestinian participants in the uprising. And now we know what they do to people at that prison. This, pretty bad stuff. Also this, just demonic. And also all of this. So no surprise, his magazine, The Atlantic, would put out articles like this. And if we look back in his career, he's actually been sort of deceiving people for a very long time. He was one of those who lied us into the Iraq War. By the way,
Much like our good friend at the Washington Post, Robert Kagan. But at least we know the New York Times isn't run by neocons, right?
claims that he's making here, the connections, completely debunked, all just made up. And 8 years after that, he made the case for another war in the Middle East that we need to pursue. So it kind of begs the question, who is the real threat to the safety of the American people?
Very great point, James. Thank you. So, I mean, that kind of sums it up. But I want to cap this one off by just showing you a video, kind of a random video of someone who knows Trump really well and brings up, kind of who he is as a person behind the cameras. And this is just something that, you don't really see a lot.
You're a very self-aware man, and you support Donald Trump because he supports you, but I'm sure you also...
Well, he and I have become really good friends.
Right.
Really good friends.
Why do you think people have been trying to kill him?
Man, this whole thing is so crazy. The narrative that has been flipped on Donald Trump is one of the craziest things that I've ever seen, yet at the same time, brilliant and like a masterpiece in what they've done to this guy. First of all,
he's got respect for the way that these neocons have demonized Trump. He's like, it's actually pretty good. They did a pretty good job.
He's a racist, right? They say he's a racist.
They say that, yeah.
Show me one video, 1 ounce of proof where he has ever acted like a racist. And
well, I think a lot of people would point to when he first came on the scene. He's like, they're sending their worst about, he does say a lot of like really charged stuff about illegal immigrants that you could say is racist. But I honestly don't think Trump is a racist. I really don't. I think it's just like Bernie Sanders wasn't a misogynist or a Putin puppet. Trump is none of the things that they say that he is.
one of the things that he's said to me, he said, let me tell you what, I've been in the hotel business my whole life. And in the hotel business, people from all over the world work for you. Never been called a racist until I became a Republican and ran for president, right? I mean, and you talk to anybody of any race or color that knows him and has known him for years, they love him. I mean, there's a clip of Mike Tyson, where he says, yeah, I'm voting for Donald Trump. What are you going to do about it? He's on a podcast with some dudes.
If Mike Tyson says that to you, see, you're nothing. Not going to do anything about it.
And like, what are you going to do about it? He's like, well, I'll disagree with you. He's like, okay, so what? What are you going to do? And then he's talking about Donald Trump. He's like, yeah, you'll vote for Donald Trump because he's made you a lot of money. He's like, no, I made him a lot of money. Mike said, right?
Right. That's an interesting way to look at it.
And you could interview tons of people, without getting overly political. When you look at the guy, right?
Now, this is the part that I want to stress on. This is, if you watch any of this clip, this is the part you should listen to, because this is a very good point that I don't think anyone...
Think about growing up. Both of you probably have known people that have grown up in wealthy families, right? And the families are usually a shit show. It's a total mess. The kids are on drugs or fucked up, or they hate their parents and all this stuff. Look at Donald Trump's family. The kids adore him. They're all really nice people. I mean, Ivanka Trump is one of the nicest people that you will ever meet. And her husband, Jared Kushner, couldn't be any classier. Really, really good human beings, and as is the rest of the family. But the narrative that has been flipped on this guy has been unbelievable. And I truly believe.
And now we know who's doing it, because neocons run the goddamn press. Robert Kagan, I'm going to keep saying this, was the editor of the Washington Post until a couple days ago. That is so fucking insane. And Jeffrey Goldberg was the editor of The Atlantic. So those are like two of the most respected liberal press outlets being edited by neoconservative war pigs.
When you talk about the attempts on his life, I think when you are far left,
and this is the part, this is the part that like really gets me, because the people that are far left, like the really stupid ones, are just misled, right? Like, and I don't want to go too far down this wormhole, but like the trans thing, right? trans people should be able to do whatever they want. But then it gets to an extreme level, and you see the reason behind that is because there's money in puberty blockers and all these drugs that you have to take to transition. So anyway, I don't want to get too far off the rails here, but
there's some
I don't agree
nutty
with
far rights too, but the far lefts they're out there. Where I sit, everybody thinks I'm some kind of hardcore Republican. I'm right down the middle.
I would also say that a lot of the far lefts are fucking ops. You know, the Antifa, Black Bloc people. David Frum said it himself. They're undercover cops.
Common sense. There are a lot of things about me that are you know, I would consider liberal, and there's a lot of things about me that I would consider conservative. But I'm all about common sense, and I don't judge people by their politics. I judge people whether, you know, are you a douchebag? Okay,
Right.
If you're a douchebag, I probably don't like you.
Yeah.
If you're a Democrat, I could give a shit
Yeah.
who you vote for. That's the other thing that I don't like. I don't like people who judge people by who they vote for. This is America. You can vote for whoever the hell you want to,
vote for who you want.
right? And or your religious beliefs or your whatever. I don't care about it.
And it's interesting because where I live is very liberal, and you don't see Trump signs, but I guarantee you there are Trump voters here because they know that that sign is like, oh, that's a racist. That's how whipped up into bullshit people are. And just to kind of slam this home for you, I'm going to show you this clip that Glenn Greenwald had of Trump on Oprah in the late 80s. This is crazy.
Trump has been extremely famous in the United States for 5 decades. I remember living in New York City when I went to law school in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and he was this gigantic cultural figure. And he wasn't just a gigantic cultural figure, he was beloved by all elites. He went on Oprah Winfrey show, and she all but encouraged him to run for president. And here, let's just take a look at how he used to be treated, this Adolf Hitler figure.
Full-page ad in major U.S. newspapers last year criticizing U.S. foreign policy. What would you do differently, Donald?
I'd make our allies, forgetting about the enemies you can't talk to so easily, I'd make our allies pay their fair share. We're a debtor nation. Something's going to happen over the next number of years with this country because you can't keep going on losing $200 billion, and yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade.
So one of the things that I've tried to hammer with Tulsi and not Bernie, like not a lot of the Democrats, but these people that are consistent, and this is Trump, he's kind of sounds the same back then as he does now with a lot of
If
this
you
stuff.
ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. And, hey, I have tremendous respect for the Japanese people. I mean, you can respect somebody that's beating the hell out of you, but they are beating the hell out of this country. Kuwait, they live like kings. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
This sounds like political presidential talk to me, and I know people have talked to you about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?
Probably not, but I do get tired of seeing the country ripped off.
Why would you not?
I just don't think I really have the inclination to do it. I love what I'm doing. I really like it.
Also, it doesn't pay as well.
No, it doesn't. But, you know, I just probably wouldn't do it, Oprah. I probably wouldn't, but I do get tired of seeing what's happening with this country. And if it got so bad, I would never want to rule it out totally because I really am tired of seeing what's happening with this country, how we're really making other people live like kings and we're not.
We're really making other people live like kings and we're not. And now you see neoconservatives aligned against this guy, calling him a Nazi in the press. And both of these editors of these national publications have deep ties to a foreign country, which I won't mention right now because you know who it is. And there's a lot of talk that, you know, Trump is going to be the same with that ordeal in the Middle East that the current administration is. Well, if that's the case, why are the advocates for that so against him? Why are they calling him a Nazi? You have to ask yourself that. Why are the Robert Kagans and the Jeffrey Goldbergs of the world calling Donald Trump a Nazi and not Kamala Harris? Why are they so upset that the Washington Post isn't endorsing Kamala Harris? Because here's how I see Trump right now.
you have to get elected also, and because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected.
And once he has the power to, of the presidency, he doesn't have to necessarily listen to the people he's taking that sweet, sweet Zionist cash from anymore. So we're going to move into the next segment here, which is Trump on Joe Rogan. And it was a long, twisted interview. I'm not going to lie. It kind of started a little rocky, that's for sure. And we're going to get into some of the commentary that people had about it. But I think overall, it was a good interview if you watched it. And I've got most of the like real core high points for you right here. So you don't have, it's 3 hours long. But to me, the headline, and I tweeted this, was that this guy was there mentally for 3 hours, whether he does ramble and he calls it the weave, whatever, that's his way, I guess, of kind of minimizing it a little bit. And Rogan does a decent job of trying to keep him on course. But I'm going to start. This is basically all the clips that I've got. So this first one is about the hiring of John Bolton and kind of the people that he brought into the administration that he thought were not good choices. And I think John Bolton is probably at the top of that list, right? Here we go.
Say that it always comes back to the same answer. The biggest mistake I made was I picked some people. I picked some great people, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I shouldn't have picked. And
neocons?
Yeah, neocons, or bad people, or disloyal people, or
people that were just
people
bad,
that were into the
people got bad advice.
Yeah, you're reading about them a little bit today.
When you get into a position like that and you're a newcomer, what do? You take the advice of the people that are already in DC. Trump was not a DC guy. He was a New York guy. So
a guy like Kelly, who was a bully, but a weak person. You know more about bullies than anybody probably around because you deal in a certain sport where the bullies are exposed very quickly.
Yeah.
But he's bad. Bolton was an idiot, but he was great for me because I'd go in with a guy like a John Bolton. John Bolton. A friend of mine called me up. I was.
So this is interesting. This is the kind of like low key breaking news stuff that Joe Rogan's great at getting. Listen to what he says here.
Very smart guy. His name is Phil Ruffin. He's a very rich guy from Las Vegas. He's a great card player. He doesn't play cards, but he's a great player. He's just a natural. Got poker sense, right? The good old poker sense. And Phil Ruffin is a very, very wise kind of a guy, and one of the richest people around, and has had great success and understands people. So it was in that I was picking Bolton, or I picked Bolton. He called up. He said, "Don't pick him. Why? He's a bad guy." Now, he wasn't in politics at all. He's in various businesses. He said, "He's a bad guy. It always works out bad with that guy." And I said, "Oh, man, I wish you told me this 2 weeks ago. I already hired him. He's here." And he was right. He was good in a certain way. He's a nut job. And every time I had to deal with a country.
I love that candor.
When they saw this whack job standing behind me, they said, "Oh, man, Trump's going to go to war with us." He was with Bush when they went stupidly into the Middle East. They should have never done it. I used to say it as a civilian. So I always got more publicity than other people. And it wasn't like I was trying.
And Joe Rogan kind of follows up by saying, yeah, because you said a lot of wild shit. That's why he got a lot of press. So here's them talking a little bit about the media.
Hitler. Even today.
What's going on now? What we just covered.
Kamala was talking about you and Hitler. They're going to take what you said about Robert E. Lee. Oh, Donald Trump wishes the South won.
That's right. He loves Robert E. Lee.
They love to take things out of context and distort things. But
they don't even have to take them out. They make them up entirely. Okay,
they do that too.
But it's interesting when you mentioned I was very popular, and all those people loved me. Some of these women, they're so stupid. And
okay, so that's another clip that's going to get taken out of context. He's talking about The View, though.
Joy. She would, every time she'd see me,
I thought he was talking about
Joy, 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 joy.
She loved you.
Joy
She loved
Behar.
me.
That episode where,
By the way,
people
Whoopi-
should watch that episode just to see what we're talking about. Like I said, we don't want to get a copyright strike, so we're not going to put it up. But if you watch the episode, it's bananas. It's like an alternative universe, and it's only
but Whoopi
9
loved
years
me.
ago.
Whoopi loved
you.
So the clip I showed from The View, I think, was even older than the one that Joe Rogan's talking about here.
Who gives you a hug and a kiss?
And how about that other one, the new one on there, the one from my administration? She writes me a letter. You're the greatest president. She leaves. You know, she worked as like an assistant press secretary. I hardly knew her, but she leaves and she writes me this gorgeous letter. What's her name? She was. I don't even know. You know. Anyway, she was in the administration. She's on now currently. Sits on the far right-hand side, whatever the hell her name is, and she writes a letter, the most beautiful letter.
So I was trying to figure out who he was talking about, and apparently it's Anna. No, not Alyssa Farah Griffin. I believe is the person that he's talking about. I could be wrong by that. Yeah, Alyssa Farah Griffin is the woman's name, just so you know.
She's quoted in the paper, he's a consequential, he was the greatest president, blah, blah, blah. Then all of a sudden she goes to The View. She started hitting the hell out of me because they won't hire her unless. I've had many people go on CNN and they called and said, I don't know what to do. They want to pay me a lot, but I have to be negative on you. I said, be negative. That's okay. There are guys on like CNN, they won't hire them.
So that's interesting too. A lot of people are like, hey, I can't get a job unless I'm anti-Trump. That's the world that you live in. When you work for an editor like Robert Kagan, that's how you get the job, right? So in this next bit, he talks about North Korea and going into talk to Kim Jong-un. And this one is a little pretty interesting as well.
Just like in no time. I said, why haven't you done it? Because the orders came in from Washington, sir, and they would come here and tell us what to do. Don't you challenge us? We're not allowed to do that, sir. That's not the military way. They tell us what to do, and we have to respect them.
So do you think that it was incompetence why they didn't go after ISIS?
I think it's a bad system. You know, when Mattis goes there or when Milley goes there who's stupid, and they tell these guys that are actually smart what to do, and the guys that are smart are saying, we don't like what they're doing, but they're not allowed to sort of counteract. Plus, the guys that went there are arrogant. You know, they're arrogant fools. They're like stupid fools. The way they pulled out of...
I love that he's just calling these guys at the top fools. Because these are the people that, you know, run with the Robert Kagans of the world that believe that despite what the American people want or who the American people elect, they have the right to do whatever they want, you know, and Kamala Harris, obviously that's why they want her, because she's an empty vessel who can be puppeted by the Blinkens and the Jake Sullivans. Keep on bombing lots of people. But let's keep going.
You know, the way they, as an example, the way they pulled out of Afghanistan with the people falling off the planes.
It's a disgrace.
It was worse than Vietnam with the
I
helicopter.
thought that was like an Onion article or something. I don't like this kind of stuff is where it gets a little silly.
It was so bad. There was no reason for it. Anyway, so we knocked them out. And I mean, we have great military. We have great people, but not the television guys. And I rebuilt the military, and then they gave a chunk of it. Now, I have to tell you, as much as it is.
So the reason I got this clip is a little long, but he says something near the end that I think is so key. And he's basically describing the Robert Kagans and the Jeffrey
It's a tiny little piece. Believe it or not, we have an unbelievable. I rebuilt the military. I rebuilt our nuclear. And in a way, I hated to redo it, but I got to realize.
When I was president, we had the greatest military in the history of our country.
How powerful that nuclear is, Joe. One bomb, Israel is gone, but forget. One bomb could take out the entire East Coast. It's so bad. And I watch these poor fools talking about our oceans will rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 500 years. I mean, we have people, we have countries. Right now you have 5 countries. And don't underestimate if you take a look at North Korea, I was there. I mean, I was with.
So he's getting a little rambly, but I think the point that he's trying to make to translate Trump for you is he's saying that the danger of nuclear war is much greater than the danger of climate change, the effects of climate change, which is a valid argument.
I had a great I got along great with him. You know, the president, he got along great. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. Obama thought we were going to go to war with North Korea. When I met with Obama just prior to the...
It is a good thing. And I'm glad he's saying that despite the way they keep smearing him. It is a good thing to get along with people like that. We get along with Saudi Arabia. We get along with a lot of terrible fucking leaders. We can get along with Russia and fucking, North
Take
Korea.
over. You know, you meet, you have a sort of a ceremonial meeting. But it lasted a long time.
We're like, oh, we're the United States. We are the beacons of morality. We're such great high representations. Imagine thinking that. Like, we're so moral and above everyone
Longer
else.
than was supposed to last. I said, what's the biggest problem? He said, North Korea. By the time I finished, we had no problem with North Korea. We were really, it was a little tough at the beginning, remember?
Mm-hmm.
He said, I have a red button on my desk. I said, I have a red button also, but mine's bigger than yours and mine works.
I like how you call them Little Rocket Man.
That's the Trump and the aspect of Trump that everyone knows. My button's bigger than yours and it works.
I said, yeah, Little Rocket. I said, Little Rocket Man, you're going to burn in hell. And it was a rough.
Yeah.
Oh, so rough that people were worried. This is crazy. And then one day I got a call, sort of like a fight. I got a call. You know, you ever see pounding, then all of a sudden, but I got a call. And it was from him, meaning his people. They wanted to meet. They wouldn't meet Obama. He tried to meet. They wouldn't even talk to him about it. And
I don't think he really tried, but yeah.
I think he expected to go to war. I actually do. I believe he expected to go. And we checked their nuclear stockpile.
With all this stuff on Obama's plate, I don't think North Korea was even on his radar at the time.
It is substantial. I mean, I said, do you do anything? I got to know him very well. I got to know him better than anybody. And I said, do you ever do anything else? Why don't you go take it easy and relax? Go to the beach. You have beautiful beach, nice beachfront property. You know, kiddingly. I said, you're always building nuclear. Just relax. You don't have to do it. Let's build some condos on your shoreline. They actually have gorgeous stuff. And he said, I just have to do it because I need it for my safety, etc. I got to know him very well. We had no problem with him. If you have a smart problem, if you have really the right president, a smart president, you're not going to have a problem. And I say it to people, we have a bigger problem, in my opinion, with the enemy from within, and it drives them crazy when I use that term.
And that
we
right
have an
there
enemy
is
from
why
within. We have people that are really bad people that I really think want to make this country unsuccessful. When you look at what's happening at our border, Joe,
So that the people he's talking about right there are the Robert Kagans and the Jeffrey Goldbergs of the world. And of course, I'm getting to making this point, and my internet is just starting to get choppy. I don't know why that would be. Talking about Jeffrey Goldberg and Robert Kagan, some of the most terrible people in the world. Just absolute neocon war pigs. Puppies and kitties, though. Yeah, I love them. Don't you love puppies and kitties? They're amazing. I love those puppies and kitties. My connection's still looking not very good, but we're going to plow. We're going to keep plowing forward. And this is where Rogan talks about RFK Jr. So
what are you, and first of all, I love this idea of you teaming up with Robert Kennedy.
Right.
And I love this Make America Healthy Again idea, because there are chemicals and ingredients in our food that are illegal in other countries because they've been shown herbicides, and there's a lot of shit that's been sprayed on our food that really is unnecessary, and there's a lot of health consequences that people are suffering from a lot of these things. And
I brought this chart for you.
Beautiful.
Because I had a feeling you'd be asking me.
Thank
Look
you.
at this chart. These are healthier
You brought a
countries.
chart
Look what
with
the
them.
United States is. I'm going to send this to RFK Jr. Look
so
at that.
this is, well, something
RFK Jr. has
along
probably
the, I
seen
was
it.
actually talking to RFK today, and he told me that more than 70% of young men are ineligible for the military because of their health.
So I just want to pause here for a second and highlight the reality that these are the kind of actual policy discussions that are happening around the Trump campaign. What kind of policy discussions are happening around the Kamala Harris campaign? I mean, other than joy and, hey, just vote for us and we won't keep doing what we're currently doing, even though we're in power. Anyway, let's keep playing this.
I could see it.
That's
a
crazy.
A lot of it's obesity.
So here's the life expectancy versus health expenditure.
Same chart.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
USA.
Wow,
yeah.
that's pretty good.
Jamie's the best.
He's very good.
He's the best.
But but look at that. Look where
at
the USA is.
It's not good. And that's our food. That's our diet. That's sedentary lifestyle. That's our diet. That's the chemicals we ingest. That's what that is.
So one of the points that, not to divert too much from this, but one of the points that Callie Means and RFK and these people are making that I think is a good one is you can change this dynamic by changing what the government subsidizes. So if the government stops subsidizing seed oils, then seed oils won't be in all our food. If the government starts subsidizing healthy, regenerative farming and that kind of stuff, that is what our food supply will look like, which is a great conversation to be having right now when, with all the stuff that's going on around us.
RFK is going to be very, I think he's a great guy.
I love the fact that you guys teamed up.
Yeah.
And are you completely committed to have him a part of your administration?
Oh, I am. But the only thing I want to be a little careful about with him is the environmental, because, he doesn't like oil. I love oil and gas. I think,
So this is another aspect, again, of Trump's candor that you got to love. I mean, he's kind of being transparent about that. He's like, look, I got to pander to the oil people. They're probably giving me some donations. So I don't want them to get too scared about RFK. Like, I'll keep him out of that.
I think
just keep him out of that.
To fire. So I'm going to sort of keep him out of a little. I said, focus on health. Focus. Yeah. You can do whatever you want. And
it's so funny how much of a demon RFK has been turned into by people that he used to run with. Like, he was an environmental lawyer who sued giant corporations that were poisoning the water and the air, and now he's an evil man.
I got to be a little bit careful with the liquid gold,
I understand. But listen, there's plenty of good work that could be done if you focus on health.
Here's the one that my all-time favorite, though.
What is that?
See the arrow right here? That's what I left.
Do you have anyone that is pressuring you to not work with him? Have there been
this is so good.
To not work with who?
RFK.
This is the kind of question you're only going to get on a podcast like this, too.
Junior.
Yes.
Yes, I would imagine. Because financially, he could put a dent.
I would say that, and, I think in many ways they've done a good job. In many ways they've done a bad job. But I would say that the Big Pharma wasn't thrilled when they heard that, I have a relation. I've actually always gotten along very well with him. I've known him a long time. He's a different kind of a guy. He's very smart, great guy. And he's very sincere about this. I mean, he really is, he thinks we spend a fortune on pesticides and all this stuff, and then you end up with that chart is a terrible chart, the one previous. It's such a bad chart when you look at where we are compared to other countries that don't spend 10 cents.
Right.
So, and you save a lot of money. But, yeah, I've had some people that aren't exactly thrilled. You can imagine, right?
Sure.
It's a good question, actually.
Well, the thing I like about this, too, is it's a way to, generate a sense of national pride that doesn't involve bombing someone, right? Like, make America healthy again. It's like, hey, let's all get together and get healthy. It's not like, hey, let's all get together and go get that guy and take his oil. It's like, hey, let's all get together and do something for the national interest that's going to be good for everyone. And that's why Robert Kagan is calling Trump a Nazi.
Certainly, if
it doesn't affect me.
Some pharmaceutical drugs that have been prescribed that have negative consequences that these people have been profiting off of, and then you have a guy like...
I don't know if Robert Kagan necessarily called... I'm sure he probably has, but it was Kelly that called Trump a Nazi, not Kagan. But, they're all just gossip CUNTs.
RFK Jr., who spends an enormous amount of time highlighting those things. You could say how they've been very reluctant to have you support him.
I would say that's an understatement. Yes.
Yeah. So what do you do to stop that from getting in the way?
Well, look, they've come up with some amazing things. I mean, I don't know how you feel. I know you're against certain vaccines, but like the polio vaccine, people had polio. It was like a disaster. And they came up, Dr. Salk, and he came up with a vaccine, and there's no polio. Now, very interesting. There hasn't been polio, but now in the Gaza Strip, can you believe that? Have you heard that? There's been a big strain of polio coming out in the Gaza Strip.
Is it vaccine-derived polio? Because, you know, there's a strain.
There's a post interview where Joe Rogan talks about how he didn't want to go too far down this rabbit hole and try to correct him on it because there's some interesting data around this.
Strain of polio that comes directly from the vaccine. Because unfortunately, sometimes when you vaccinate people for polio, you actually give them polio.
I haven't heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all I can do is I sit down and I listen to him and I'll give it a total. I would love him to be right because if he's right, it's a lot less expensive generally speaking.
There's two things that people point to.
He just said something too that not a lot of people. I sit down and I listen to him, so he actually listens to people, which is good.
When they point to the danger.
He doesn't have that reputation. They try to paint him as someone who doesn't actually listen to people.
Of the pharmaceutical drug industry. One thing is when pharmaceutical drugs were allowed to advertise on television. We're only one of 2 countries in the world that allow pharmaceutical drugs to advertise on TV.
Mm-hmm.
The other one's New Zealand, but they're more restrictive than we are. People are
but those
worried.
ads, when you hear like, you know, take a certain drug,
and then you hear all
and
the
then
consequences.
You say it causes cancer and baldness. We don't like baldness.
Suicidal
and this
ideation.
and that and eyesight, and you can lose your vision.
Yeah.
And you know, I actually asked one of these guys. I would never take. I mean, because there's things that are so bad. They go through a whole list. I guess they save some life.
This might be one of the reasons Trump is in good shape because he's like, I would never take these things.
Ability, but
even though he eats McDonald's and drinks Diet Coke,
does that
all the time.
affect the purchase? Or they say it really does. When there's something you have and you read, and then they go through the list of
side effects,
the potential side. It's not even the potential side effects.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people are just. I asked that question. People hear that. When I hear it, I'm going to take a pass. It says may affect your vision, may cause blindness, may this.
Yes.
But
well, I know you're aware of Callie Casey means, right?
Yes.
Well, one of the things that they pointed out, and this is a very important thing for people to understand, is what a lot of these drugs do is they act to somehow or another mitigate the effects of poor metabolic health. But most of these problems that these people are suffering from wouldn't exist if we put an emphasis on metabolic health. If people got healthier, they started eating nutritious food and taking vitamins, a whole host of these problems that people are having would go away.
And then you can't sell pills.
And the problem with that from the pharmaceutical drug standpoint is they wouldn't be able to sell drugs to these people. And this is a fear
the
that a lot of people
pesticides
have.
and things like that on the plants. And what do you think of that?
It's terrible. Well, I think regenerative agriculture, unfortunately, is very difficult to scale to a point where you got a jack-in-the-box on every corner.
Right, that's right.
If everybody wants food, and we have food deserts, and we have places like Los Angeles where no one's growing anything, and everything has to be shipped in, and it's very difficult to feed that many people. We've created this incredible society where we have these enormous cities, but it's very difficult to get food to these people. And then for a lot of these people in low-income areas, the only food that's available is cheap, unhealthy food.
That's right.
And we could fix that. That's if we could send $175 billion to Ukraine, we could do something to fix a lot of the health problems that the United States has.
Ding, 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 ding. There's plenty of money. Clearly plenty of money. So I'm going to skip to this last clip. And this is, I think, okay, before I load this up, I'm going to tell you my personal, and I tweeted this, so, you know, if you follow me on Twitter, you already know this, but I think right here is proof that Trump is basically set to win this election. And I'll just play the clip and then I'll explain why, because he gives something away in this clip that is very interesting that I don't think anyone but me picked up on. You know, maybe some people did. I don't watch everything, but this is very interesting. They talk about the McDonald's thing.
But
can I bring you back to 2020?
I think they're going to look at two things. They're going to say they should have had a primary, even if it was a short primary.
Yes.
They shouldn't have picked her. And then she's going to say, I shouldn't have picked this guy.
She shouldn't have picked that guy.
That guy's a
just
disaster.
the lying about Tiananmen Square.
Everything.
Admitted.
They're talking about Tim Walz, of course.
Yeah, the military record, assistant
But she
coach
lied
versus
too. She
head
lied
coach.
Too.
Yes.
Little things. So I did McDonald's last week.
I saw that.
And I actually got a call from your friends at Google, from Sundar. That's pretty good, right? He said, this is the biggest thing we've had in years.
At McDonald's?
At McDonald's. Did you know that? It was one of
So that right there to me is breaking news. The CEO of Google, Sundar Patel, I think is his name, called Trump after the McDonald's thing and said this is one of the biggest things we've seen in years, because Google, like it or not, can see what America's collective is thinking about. They can see trends. When a bunch of people go type some shit into Google, Google can see that and they can go, oh shit, this stuff is trending. We know what's on a lot of people's minds because they're searching for it in Google. So to me, this right here is proof that I think Trump is set to be the next president. The fact that the CEO of Google is calling him and talking to him about this, that's like, he's like, oh, okay, this guy's, we better make nice. And it kind of fits with the Bezos Washington Post thing and the not wanting to do an endorsement. I don't know if you saw the news a couple weeks ago about the Teamsters refused to do an endorsement as well for this reason. And I think a lot of people, you look at some of the early voting results coming in, there's a lot of excitement among Republicans. There's a lot of anti-democratic sentiment due to the current situation in the Middle East. So I think a lot of people in my pool of political thought are going to vote for the Green Party. I mean, at this point, I don't even know if I'm going to vote. If I was going to vote, I would probably cast a ballot for Jill Stein, just because I would like to see her get to the 5%. And where I would vote in California, Trump is not going to win anyway. So it'd kind of be a waste for me to vote for Trump in California. I don't think he's going to have a chance in that state. But I do think this is kind of the best evidence I've seen so far that he's pretty much a shoo-in at this point. So
That was funny.
Who's a great guy, by the way, but he said, this McDonald's thing, I want to tell you, it's one of the biggest things we've ever had on Google. It just hit. But the reason I did it, and I actually, you never know about this stuff. I thought it was a throwaway.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think our conversation was a throwaway, but I thought I'd walk in, and that was only to highlight the fact. And I have a friend, he owns like 56 of these McDonald's, and he said, "Do you want to use one?" I said, "Yeah, I love it." So we went there, and the crowd was crazy. They had 28,000 people around the whole thing. Did you see the outside? It was crazy. The cars couldn't get through. Secret Service was not exactly thrilled. We had no idea what the hell. But I went into the place, and I did the French fry thing, and it just hit. But that's like in life. Sometimes you do. I thought it was like a quick throwaway. We're going to be there for 15 minutes. Then I said, I've worked here for 15 minutes, which is 15 minutes more than she worked here. She lied about McDonald's. And
that's funny.
Proven that she never worked at McDonald's?
McDonald's has no information. No, she has no information. There's nobody. The manager said she never worked there. It was a certain place, and he said they never. No, she lied. She's a liar. You know what they do? They'll say, like, on any one of the questions, they'll say, it's the exact opposite of what I say. IVF. He's against IVF, the fertilization.
Right.
And it's the exact opposite. I came out immediately strongly in favor. And they do ads. I'm against it. It's wrong.
So he's not wrong about that. And I'm going to do a quick piece on the abortion debate in just a minute. But I want to kind of cap this one off by showing you the commentary of a person. And this is the last time, honestly, that I'm going to go after Kyle. But this is Kyle's Kalinski's take on this interview. And just to read this to you. I'm an hour and 12 minutes into the Rogan Trump interview, and it is by far the single worst interview of a major political candidate I've ever seen in my life. Embarrassing isn't a strong enough word. I'm in awe of how horribly stupid this is.
Fuck you, Cap. Fuck you, Cap. Fuck you, Cap.
I just showed you clips from it. So I did say, I will, and I did admit, Trump does get a little rambly. There's definitely, especially at the beginning, because he kind of goes down these side streets about a bunch of different stuff. But there is some substance in it, as we just showed you. And so this whole take that it's just a dummy thing, to me, it's proof that Kyle works for the DNC. His goal is not to, convince you that the interview is dumb. His goal is to convince you not to watch it because it's just stupid. Don't listen to anything in it. And it's so clear to me that this guy is a partisan hack. He's paid by these people. So he posted this picture of Elon Musk and Trump with Epstein. as if this isn't the most inane and ridiculous thing you could ever, make. When Bill Clinton was on Epstein Island constantly, a lot of the Democrats are tied up with this. So it's one of those things, it's a non-issue really, because everyone's guilty of this association. So Squid Diddly posted this really great rebuttal. And this is actually how I found the tweet, because I don't follow Kyle. But they go, coughs in Spanish. And here's a picture of Kamala Harris at a party with Ghislaine Maxwell as well. And so I chimed in and I said, Kyle Kalinski's remaining audience be like, and I posted my favorite COVID guy for them. This guy.
Ain't that America for you and me? Ain't that America?
And so one of Kyle's simps jumped in and he goes, can you tell me exactly how a blindfolded stock photo is representative of the people refusing to ignore the direct associations between Musk, Trump, Diddy, and Epstein? Do you think paying attention is analogized well by a person who cannot see? Do you know what an analogy is? So this guy thought he was totally dunking on me with this comment. And I had to explain to him that those photos and associations are meaningless as these are. Next question. And here's pictures of, the one that Squid Diddly posted of Kamala with Ghislaine Maxwell, Hillary Clinton shaking hands with Vladimir Putin, and Hillary Clinton hugging P. Diddy. That's how I feel about all of this. It's all irrelevant. And so this kind of ended with this guy going, none of these exist in a vacuum, and we all know Trump is independently a sexual predator. Oh my God. Joe Biden has multiple accusations, Lucy Flores and Tara Reid, to name a couple as well. So I said, so was Bill Clinton and Joe Biden. So is Kamala's husband. If you haven't read about his dalliances, have you read about Doug Emhoff and the nanny? The point is, none of this shit is relevant. These claims can be made about anyone. Focus on policy, not pearl clutching BS. And that is where I dropped the mic on that one. So this is a quick piece I wanted to show you, just kind of tying this all together about these cringe propaganda outlets. So this is a bit about the New York Times doing soft propaganda against third parties. And I think it was really well highlighted by this dude, Alex Caracas. How do you say Caracassanis? Caracassanis, I think is how you say it. The TS is it's like a Greek thing. But anyway, one of the accounts I follow, Joe Biden is a MFing warmonger, happened to retweet this, so I caught it. So let me just read this to you real quick. Remember the time Biden assured his donor base nothing would fundamentally change? The NYT, as they did then, are once again providing excuses for Democrats and their future and their failure, their failure to deliver the changes they promise. So they're again running on things they promised in the last cycle, and some people are dumb enough to buy that. So Alex has this really great breakdown. I'm going to try to fly through here because I'm already over 2 hours at this point. Thread. Today's front page in the New York Times is a good lesson or two of the most important tactics in propaganda. Take a propaganda at these nuts, boy. So check this out. This is actually really, really well done by Alex here. So he says, first, notice the euphemism pragmatism, the idea that people who support enormous injustice and terrible policies are pragmatic is one of the most subtly ideological and dangerous characteristics of corporate news. This trope is used for decades. And so this is Erica Green, White House correspondent for the New York Times, and she says Kamala Harris is not offering sweeping change, even as voters express dissatisfaction about the direction of the country. She's an institutionalist who wants to preserve the democratic ideals and an incrementalist who believes progress takes time. That means her pragmatic approach could be frustrating to some supporters. So yeah, this is how they're justifying basically heel dragging and knuckle dragging on behalf of the Democratic Party. We finally got Obama's change we can believe in. And what did we get? We got Mitt Romney's healthcare plan. You know, we finally got a progressive guy in Bernie Sanders who's going to work on creating a public healthcare system. And what did we get? He got stomped for Hillary Clinton, who lost to Trump. And that populism happened to express itself through Trump because it was stomped out on the left, you know? So to keep going here, Alex says, people become unable to distinguish between someone who supports lofty values but who is wisely playing 4D chess by pretending not to support them for years versus someone who actually doesn't support, say, universal healthcare, social security, peace, economic equality, etc. For years, this euphemism has been weaponized to tell progressives, look, this powerful establishment politician agrees with you, your values, but they are just being smart. Not only does this constrain the imagination for what is possible with organizing, but it's often just a lie. And this is kind of some of the argument that the brunch liberals I'm related to make to me. Oh, you know, you can't, Republicans are going to stop it. You know, this is always the knuckle dragger, heel dragger excuse for why we can't have nice things, right? Sure, some politicians with similar values are more effective than others, both operating within strategic constraints and changing what is possible by working with social movements. But this trope is typically used to mask the difference between politicians with different values. So to keep moving here, he keeps going and he says, second, notice the previous sentence, something that would fit nicely in the NYT's critiques of North Korean media. The evidence-free claims about what Harris wants, but also the bold assertion that Harris wants the progress the NYT readers yearn for. There's a mistype there, says years for, but I think waited years for, maybe you forgot that, or yearn for. So here's what she says in this paragraph. He's criticizing what's at stake, the pace of change. Kamala Harris is not offering sweeping change, even as voters express dissatisfaction about the direction of the country. She's an institutionalist who wants to preserve democratic ideals and an incrementalist who believes progress takes time. That means her pragmatic approach could be frustrating to some support. So I guess that's the same piece, and I'm just kind of he's breaking it down a little further for you. So he kind of, to sum this up, and I just accidentally opened a program I wasn't trying to open. He says, hold on a sec. Am I on the right slide here? No, here it is. What you're seeing now, or what you're seeing here, reader, is not someone who enjoys the terrible things she's supporting, who may fire Lena Khan, or who is supporting a genocide in violation of the institutions of U.S. and international law. It's someone being patient, the only way to get good things. And so the NYT tells people that this powerful politician agrees with the values of progressive readers and what kind of society we all want. The only difference, the pace of change. So that's how they get you to accept mediocrity, basically. And he pulls up a great proof of this in MLK's letter from the Birmingham jail. And he says, reminds me of MLK's letter from Birmingham jail in 1963. And he highlights the part where King says, first, I must confess that over the last few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizens counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, which kind of takes me back to the tweet that I used to open up that last piece about fascism and how a lot of people, he said, I feel like too many people don't recognize fascism because they think fascism will arrive selling oppression and tyranny. But if you're part of the privileged group, fascism is selling you safety, normalcy, and tradition. And that's kind of the point that Alex is making here, of course, with this bit about MLK and how this is the tactic that they've kind of always used. So to close this out, he says, and I wanted to touch on this because I disagree with a little bit of this part of it. He says, as I write in my upcoming propaganda book, the NYT's coverage of Democrats is like when you keep running into someone at a dinner party and they keep saying they'd love to get together with you, but every time you text them, they are busy. Accurate, snobby, CUNTs. After a few decades of this, you might want to consider other explanations. Right. And that's where I've been at since 2016. We are facing an unprecedented threat of global authoritarianism. On the substance part of why this matters is that this kind of propaganda is covering for Democrats. This kind of propaganda covering for Democrats is enabling the rise of the far right. And so that is the part that I think he gets a little bit wrong, because the Democrats are the far right. They are the far right. I just showed you Robert Kagan edited the Washington Post. Jeffrey Goldberg edited the Atlantic. These are neocon. The Democrats are the far right now. They're just draped in like, oh, we're going to be a little bit better. And I think he gets that completely. But at the end, he kind of like misnomers that as if like Trump is some great threat to democracy. Like I just showed you, if Trump is going to be so terrible on Israel, why are guys like Jeffrey Goldberg, who was actually a member of the IDF, telling everyone that Trump's a Nazi in their massively viewed publications? Why? You have to ask yourself that question. You know, if Trump is seriously as bad as Kamala Harris, why are all the worst people coming out to call him names and try to ensure that he doesn't get in there? You know? So that is the soft propaganda that the NY Times is doing on behalf of the fascist regime that's supported by the Kagans, the Victoria Nulands, the Jeffrey Goldbergs of the world. And for that reason alone, Trump is a better option. He is the lesser of two evil. I don't care what else you think about him. That the fact that the Cheneys are doing campaign stops and liberals are screaming for George W. Bush to come out and endorse Kamala Harris tells you all you need to know. Mike Pence endorsed Kamala Harris, you know? And so one of the arguments a lot of women make to me about Harris, you know, they're scared about abortion rights. And I have to tell you, ladies, don't get emotional, because the abortion debate is over. Okay? It's over. You're going to be able to have abortions no matter what. And I'm going to explain why to you right now, because that is one of the most frustrating things about this current election cycle is they just flat out lie about shit that is not actually true. So I don't know if you know this, but I'm a little bit of a dirty dude, and I've flirted with having to, you know, have girlfriends, have abortions, and all that kind of stuff. So this is an issue I've dealt with personally. Okay. Now, I don't know if you know this either, but there is a drug called what was it called? Mifepredazone. I'm just going to pull up the article here for you. So back in April, the Supreme Court voted unanimously to allow this drug to be sent by mail. And it's called mifeprezidone or mifeprezidone. I always fuck up the name of it. Hold on a second. Let me cue this up for you real quick. So it's a drug called mifepristone. I was going to say mifepredazone or whatever. It's one of those pharmaceutical drugs. Mifepristone, okay? Like mifepristone. It's an interesting name for a drug. So let's get into it. This is from April. What's the date on this? Yeah. So basically April of this year. Unanimous Supreme Court preserves access to widely used abortion medication. So this medication will allow a woman to have an abortion in any state legally by mail. And even in states where they're trying to outlaw it, it's like getting boner pills, guys. Like, it's discreet. Like, unless you go tell on yourself, say, hey, I'm getting abortion pills in the mail, no one's going to know about this. So technology has kind of, you know, run its course on this issue. But I want to start over here by saying Roe v. Wade is like a dog catching a car it's chasing it, right? Because how much further can conservatives go than repealing Roe v. Wade? That was the biggest abortion legislation in the country, and it's gone now. So what are they going to do now? Start, you know, jailing women who have abortions? No. And if you listen to the sentiment of the general sentiment, especially of the new Trump Republican Party, it's people like Nancy Mace and Nikki Haley who are like, look, I'm pro-life, but you got to have exceptions for rape and incest. You got to, for the life of the mother, all that stuff. So the modern Republican Party, I think, has realized they're the dog that caught the car and they can't use this issue anymore. But the Democrats haven't got that memo yet, and they're still able to trick their stupid followers into this. So this drug, mifepristone, was unanimously, the Supreme Court decided unanimously that the FDA cannot block it from being mailed anywhere in the country. So I'm going to read you some of this article and we're going to talk about it. And then I'm going to show you what Trump said about it because people forgot about all this stuff. So the Supreme Court on Thursday unanimously preserved access to a medication that was used in nearly 2/3 of all abortions. Nearly 2/3 of all abortions. So this pill that the Supreme Court just unanimously, and I think this article gets into why it was unanimous, and spoiler alert, it has to do with money, but let's keep going. So 2/3 of all abortions in the last year in the court's first abortion decision since conservative justices overturned Roe v. Wade 2 years ago, since they caught the car. The 9 justices ruled that abortion opponents lacked the legal right to sue over the Federal Food and Drug Administration's approval of the medication mifepristone and the FDA's subsequent actions to ease access to it. The case had threatened to restrict access to mifepristone across the country, including in states where abortion remains legal. Abortion is banned at all stages of pregnancy in 14 states and after about 6 weeks of pregnancy in 3 others. So 17 states have like pretty tight strict restrictions. And if I'm a woman, I wouldn't, who cares about this? I wouldn't want to live in those states. So don't be sexually active. Like that's on you, Alabama. Like your women have more consequences. So you're going to get laid less, or you know what I mean? Or smart professional women aren't going to live in your state. That's the consequences of Roe v. Wade being overturned. But also smart professional women in Alabama can order this pill without any consequences as long as they don't tell everybody. So let's keep going. Abortion is banned at all states. Okay, so Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who is part of the majority to overturn Roe, wrote for the court Thursday that federal courts are the wrong forum for addressing the plaintiff's concerns about FDA actions. Interesting. So the opinion underscored the stakes of the 2024 election and the possibility that an FDA commissioner appointed by Republican Donald Trump, if he wins the White House, could consider tightening access to mifepristone, including prohibiting sending it through the mail. Hold that thought because we're going to address that in a few minutes. Kavanaugh's opinion managed to unite a court deeply divided over abortion and many other divisive social issues by employing a minimalist approach that focused solely on the technical legal issue of standing and reached no judgment about the FDA's action. Kavanaugh's 7 pro-life references to abortion opponents may have been the only language in his opinion that revealed anything about his views on abortion. While praising the decision, President Joe Biden signaled Democrats will continue to campaign heavily on abortion ahead of the November elections because that's all they've got. And Biden's not even in the running anymore. It does not change the fact that the right for women to get treatment she needs is imperiled, if not impossible, in many states, Biden said in a bullshit statement that was written by his handlers who are trying to hype this up as an issue, even though it's really not. I added that last part. Marjorie Dannenpfizer, president of the SBA Pro-Life America, expressed disappointment with the ruling, but trained her fire on Democrats. Joe Biden and the Democrats are hell-bent on forcing abortion on demand for any time, for any reason, including a DIY or abortions on every state and every country, Dannenpfizer said. So this woman is the batshit extremist who, just lost, and they're not going to win this one. It's over. About 2/3 of U.S. adults oppose banning the use of mifepristone, and was responsible for 2/3 of those people won't be in the gene pool next year because the pill was used for 2/3 of abortion, or medication of abortion. According to a KFF poll conducted in February, about 1/3 would support a nationwide ban. So the vast majority supports people having access, women having access to abortion. The High Court is separately considering another abortion case about whether a federal law on emergency treatment at hospitals overrides state abortion bans in rare emergency cases in which a pregnant patient's health is at serious risk. We'll see how they rule on that, but they would be absolutely ridiculous if they ruled that a woman needs to die because of a baby. More than 6 million people have used mifepristone since 2000. Mifepristone blocks the hormone progesterone and primes the uterus to respond to the contraction-causing effect of a second drug, misoprostol. The 2-drug regimen has been used to end pregnancy through 10 weeks gestation. Interesting. But let's keep going. Julian Phillips of North Brookfield, Massachusetts, took mifepristone after she suffered a miscarriage 8 years ago. She eventually passed the remains of her 9-week pregnancy, which she buried in a memorial garden. It should have never been something we had to win, Phillips, a 42-year-old mother of 3, said. These decisions that should be happening in medical exam room, not in courtrooms. And I completely agree with that. And I think most conservatives in the modern era, after what happened with the pandemic, would probably agree with that if you really put their feet to the fire on it. So you think the government should force medical procedures on people or tell them what they can and can't do, huh? Yeah, with abortion you do, but not with a certain experimental medical procedure that happened during the pandemic. Anyway, to keep going, healthcare providers have said that if mifepristone is no longer available or is too hard to obtain, they would switch to using only misoprostol, which is somewhat less effective in ending pregnancies. So even if they did ban it, there's still another drug they can sell to do it. Biden's administration and drug manufacturers had warned that so this is the part that I was talking about the money. Biden's administration and drug manufacturers had warned that siding with abortion opponents in this case could undermine the FDA's drug approval process beyond the abortion context by inviting judges to second-guess the agency's scientific judgments. The Democratic administration and New York-based Danco Laboratories, which makes mifepristone, argued that the drug is among the safest the FDA has ever approved. Safe and effective. So there you go. That is the reason that this case won, because there's a big moneyed pharma lobby behind keeping that pill legal. They don't give a shit about the morality of abortion. No, none of these people, all they care about is money. And this is proof. And again, it's proof that this debate is over. Abortion is widely available right now. I could order pills by mail right now if I needed, if I got someone pregnant and needed to get a quick abortion. I could order the pills online, have them here tomorrow, and the baby would be done. So that's the world we live in. And you can thank the pharmaceutical industry for upholding this ruling, ladies, because abortion is widely available and right now and will be in every state for the foreseeable future, as long as you're not a loudmouth about it. Last slide here, just to close this off. The decision safeguards access to a drug that has decades of safe and effective use. Safe and effective, Danco spokeswoman Abigail Long said in a statement. The plaintiffs in the mifepristone case, anti-abortion doctors and their organizations, argued in court that papers that the FDA's decisions in 2016 and 2021 to relax restrictions on getting the drug were unreasonable and jeopardized women's health across the nation. The opposite is, of course, true. Kavanaugh acknowledged what he described as the opponents' sincere legal, moral, ideological, and policy objections to elective abortion and to FDA's relaxed regulations of mifepristone. Federal laws already protect doctors from having to perform abortions or give any other treatment that goes against their beliefs. So there it is right there. That's your freedom. If you're anti-abortion and you're a doctor, don't do abortions. You don't have to. But for everyone else, shut up. Kavanaugh wrote, the plaintiffs have not identified any instance where a doctor was required, notwithstanding conscientious is that the word? Conscientious objections? Conscience objections? Sorry. To perform an abortion to provide other abortion-related treatment that violated the doctor's conscience since mifepristone's 2000 approval, he wrote. So there it is. And just to kind of put the last little bit of trim on this for you, here is video of Trump. Here's video of Trump. It's I've been on for a long time. Here's video of Trump talking about this decision and how he felt about it. Listen to this.
Abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question.
There it is. That's all you needed to hear. So Trump said right there on the debate stage, he agrees with the Supreme Court, who unanimously upheld people's right to have this pill, mifepristone, and he will not block it. And I mean, take the guy at his word. But I just think it's funny that people are being emotionally whipped up as if this is like abortion is a big deal when it's clearly not. You can order mifepristone right now. And I don't work for the company that sells it, Danforth, but I wanted to show you that that's why they won in court, because there's a big moneyed lobby behind selling that pill, and they're not going to let their profits be affected by a bunch of religious people who are clutching their pearls over abortion. So we got I got one more segment for you. I had so much more, but this is a fun one, and it involves my personal hero, Mr. Jose Vega, who I think is the foremost activist right now. And I just love that this guy is out there doing this. It takes massive balls to do this. And man, he's getting other people to do it as well. And let's just watch this clip, because this is Jose at a Nancy Pelosi book signing. And get this, Nancy Pelosi's book is called The Art of Power. It just does not get any more disgusting than that. Like, okay, anyway, let's let Jose.
Nancy, I'm glad to hear that you disagreed with the Iraqi war, but you do not disagree with the genocide that's taking place right now in Palestine. Okay? You're not in a position to lecture anyone right now. You're not in a position to lecture anyone. All right? There is a genocide taking place. 200,000 dead Palestinians. We're about to go to New.
See, and all these people live in a bubble where they never hear any of this, because the Robert Kagan and Jeffrey Goldberg driven press is not letting this kind of stuff get through.
Nuclear war right now with Lebanon. All right? You're a washed-up fraud. You don't need to lecture anyone. Okay? We should be working for peace. We need to cooperate with other nations, and that's what we should be doing.
Do you feel powerful? Do you feel powerful killing Palestinian children? Do you feel powerful sending people to Ukraine?
I like that tough guy, because it's a woman. The tough guy pipes up and is like, "Get the fuck out of here. I came here to listen to my views being reflected back at me. How dare you break my cognitive dissonance?"
Hey, do you think that's... Do you find power in that? Do you find power in killing all these innocent civilians?
Nazi Pelosi more bricks in the stock market than her own constituents in San Francisco. Isn't it kind of funny how poor the country is? Isn't that funny, huh? How's all that stock market money going, Nancy? How did you become a millionaire?
How did you become a millionaire?
Hey, Nancy! The art of power? What about the art of corruption?
That's my favorite.
So corrupt! How many millions do you think of the stock trading? And you don't care about us!
Go.
I love that. More like the art of corruption.
What about the art of corruption?
Brilliant stuff. And I cut this last time just for Jose, but
Hey, are there any balls down there? About the biggest bear you ever seen, Diggleberry.
get the fuck out of here. So I wanted to highlight this because, and I tweeted underneath this, I just said, man, I love you so much, Jose. No one out there deserves more respect right now than Jose Vega for doing that kind of stuff. And, you know, it's great to see a lot of the people in the online left, the Do Dissonance crowd, and that really getting out and supporting this guy with their massive audience, and Jimmy Dore and all the online leftist streamers, because Vega actually has a shot at getting into Congress. And a guy doing that ain't going the same route that an AOC is, right? So I just wanted to show the fruits of Vega's labor, because I don't know if he was involved in this one, but recently Kamala Harris was heckled at a campaign stop in Michigan. And so Vega's methods are spreading.
Fighting for America's future. And
And we understand the opportunity we have before us to turn the page on the fear
Hey, are there any balls down there? About the biggest pair you ever seen, Diggleberry.
All right, I've gone way over today what I expected. I cut some stuff from my roster, but thank you for sticking around. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully, I delivered some information that added value to your thought process, and hopefully you like and subscribe. I'm like right on the cusp of having 500 subs. So if you haven't, please do that. You know, I'm not the type that's always out here like and subscribe. I come on, I do my shit, and then I get the hell out of here. And then I post my clips. So I'm back. I'm like I said at the beginning, I'm kind of on a roll right now. I'm kind of, you know, in a groove. So I should have the clips from this stream up, you know, within the next day or so. And I'm just going to keep churning these out. Hopefully I'll be able to pop on a little bit more as we get closer to the election. You know, I don't really cover the horse race aspect of this as much as I should. I'm trying to kind of like go into the weeds more on the hypocrisies and nuances of the media. So I think there's a lot of other shows that do a better job covering the horse race aspect, like the polls and who's in the lead and all the little data points from different swing states and all that kind of stuff. That's not really not my vibe. I just kind of like to comment about the larger cultural issues and make fun of hypocrites largely and point out hypocrites. That's more my wheelhouse, if you will. So on that note, I'm going to close out with one of my favorite musical pieces that I've put together in recent years, because it illustrates how cringe and awful the corporate media has become, right? And it's about how voters are actually a threat to democracy. This is one of the hits that I put together a couple months ago when Mika Brzezinski on Morning Joe said that voters are a threat to democracy, if you remember this or not. So I'm going to close. I'm going to take you out with this masterpiece of a hop-in track that I put together called Voters Are a Threat to Democracy, featuring Mika Brzezinski of Morning Joe. And I really hope that y'all have a fantastic rest of your Sunday. And we'll see you out there on the internet and in the comments. And take good care of yourselves. I got love for y'all.
White rural voters, a threat to democracy at this point. Voters, a threat to democracy at 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 white rural voters, white rural voters, white rural voters, the threat to American democracy. Voters, a threat to democracy at 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 white rural voters, white rural voters, white rural voters, white rural voters. Why are white rural voters a threat to democracy at this point? Voters, a threat to democracy at 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 white rural voters, white rural voters, white rural voters, the threat to American democracy.